This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.
Can I welcome members, officers and the public to today's meeting of the Transport Committee. Our main item of business today is a discussion on bus journey times, followed by a discussion of London Travel Watch's business plan 2026-27. Please make sure that your electronic devices are switched off or to silent mode. And can I ask guests and members to position their microphones so that they can be heard clearly? So it's about there. I think you're all fine. Can I ask can I start by asking our clerk, Hannah Barlow, if any apologies have been received?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Assemblymember Desai.
It's slightly echoey. Can I ask the committee to note the recommendations set out at item 2 and ask if members have any other interest to declare? Yep. Can I ask the committee to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the committee held on the 12th of November 2025 to be signed by me as a correct record? Thank you. Can I ask the committee to note the completed and outstanding actions arising from its previous meetings and the additional correspondence received and sent? Thank you. Can I ask the committee to note the responses from the Deputy Mayor for Transport, the Director of Strategy at Transport for London and the Director of Licensing and Regulation Transport for London to our letters on the licensing of taxi and private hire drivers? Thank you. We now move on to our main item of business, which is discussion on bus journey times. And I'd like to welcome our guests, Paul Lynch, who's Managing Director, London Stagecoach Bus, and President, the Confederation of Passenger Transport, Michael Roberts, Chief Executive, London Travel Watch, Kevin Stagg, Chair of the Unite London and Eastern Passenger Committee, and Nadine Edwards, Regional Officer from Unite the Union. Thanks very much for everyone for coming. So I'm going to start off with the first question, and then I'm going to pass over to my colleagues on the committee to ask further questions. So firstly, to everyone, what impact do long bus journey times have on passengers, on bus drivers, on network performance, and on London's wider transport objectives? So we'll follow up with some detailed questions, but if you could give us a general sense of that, that would be fantastic. Does anyone want to kick off? Paul?
Happy to, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thanks for the invite. A subject inevitably dear to London bus operators' hearts. It's a very broad question, Chair, so I'll try to be brief. The biggest single impact, of course, is on the customer, on the people using the buses. It's making them less attractive and less reliable. For them, it can be putting people off from using them. In terms of the operator, I'm sure we'll get into the causes and the reasons for the decline in bus speeds. But we are used to difficult traffic conditions in London. It's our bread and butter. However, conditions have worsened over the last few years, to a point where, somebody who works for me in charge of our service performance and has been around for 40 years operating buses in London says it's the worst he has ever seen. So lots of reasons for that, whether it's roadworks, whether it's items reducing capacity, but it's reducing our speed, it's reducing our reliability, and in turn that's impacting on not just us and the contracts we have with TfL and whether we get penalties or incentives as a result. But more importantly, it's having an impact, as I said at the start, on the number of people using buses. And it's got to be one of the reasons why bus passenger numbers are declining at the same time that bus speeds are. There's work by London Travel Watch, there's work by our organisation CPT and others, which shows there is a direct relationship between bus speeds and bus patronage, and unfortunately we're experiencing that in London now. Buses are caught in endless traffic. Of course, they can't go round it in the way that other traffic could, and they're caught in it time after time during the day. So one set of roadworks, they may go through it 8 or 10 times. And of course, the impact just multiplies the more works there are. Just to give you one figure alongside all of the anecdotal stuff I'm saying. I got somebody to count this in preparation for today. At the moment, the routes that we operate are subject to 86 sets of roadworks that are longer than 4 weeks. So that's not the total number of roadworks, there's a lot more than that, but 86, that's just us as a company, so there's more than that around London. I picked that because they're the long-term works, the 4 weeks plus, and we've had something like 3,000 notice of events so far this year. So it's a massive administration problem for the boroughs, for TfL, for us, but most importantly, it's causing a deterioration in the product, and it's causing a loss of patronage and therefore revenue.
Thanks very much, Paul. Yep, go on. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I look upon it from the driver's point, and the big issue for drivers are, passengers can get off the bus and jump on the tube, whatever. The driver's got to stay with the bus, and the length of time it's now taking to get from one end to the other, I think, is impacting on their welfare. Fatigue. If you're sitting in traffic for 20 odd minutes and then you move a couple of feet forward and another 20 minutes. And I'm not, when I look at some of the roadworks that have gone on and what's planned, I do worry going forward that there will probably be more fatigue events with drivers. And that's simply because, it's very hard with the facilities we've got as bus drivers, to get a good meal, even to try and get a drink sometimes, is hard. So on the driver's side, I think a lot needs to be done with forward planning on how it actually is going to affect the route and what can be done. Because if we don't think ahead, the bus operators aren't going to make any money, but worse than that, people, I've known people who have been in this industry for 20, 30 years and they're leaving just simply because they just can't take it no more. Sometimes it is like a car park in London, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We'll definitely come back to some of those subjects. Michael, Nadine?
Thank you, Chair. So increasing average journey speeds, journey times makes bus travel less attractive. That has a disproportionate impact on those sectors of the London population that use buses most. So those people with reduced mobility, those people on lower incomes, those people from ethnic minority groups. To the extent that they are able to change their behaviour as a result, it means reduced patronage, which in turn means reduced income to TfL. It also means increased cost via the train operators. It also means increased cost to TfL because you need more buses to run a given level of service, and that is obviously of concern to the travelling public more generally, to the extent that it bites upon TfL's ability to invest in the transport service network more generally. And ultimately, if it means buses are less attractive and people are using them to a lower degree, it is bad for London because buses are an effective use of road space, and it's going to have an impact on keeping London moving. One kind of factoid that I spotted, and I think it's a TfL-generated figure, is that I think it is for every 10% reduction in journey speeds, there's a 6% reduction in demand. So it just gives some sense of the scale of potential impact if speeds are falling. It's important to say, of course, as I think the committee knows, we have been advocating for action to improve average journey speeds. It needs to be within safe speeds. We're certainly not advocating speeding, but this is an important area to get right. And in the research that we published last year, there are many factors that affect the attractiveness of buses and therefore the extent to which people will be encouraged to use buses more. Journey times, and therefore by implication average journey speeds, was the number one thing.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Do you have something to...
Yeah, so one of the big impacts that we've seen is with PVR, with the reduction of PVR. Yeah, in other words, the widening.
Could you tell me what...
People waiting longer.
Explain PVR.
Which is causing a big issue.
Sorry, do we know what PVRs, passenger...
PVR stands for peak vehicle requirement. It's the number of buses at a maximum that you need to operate a bus during a day.
Fantastic. Apologies, sorry.
Thanks for that, Paul.
treat us as lay people, I'm afraid. So,
My apologies. But yeah, so if you think about it, if you've taken X amount of buses out of it, that means you've got more people boarding buses, like taking longer to board, taking longer to offload passengers, all causes delay all the way through. But one of the big things that we've seen is the amount of abuse and physical assaults on drivers in London due to, and unfortunately a lot of this is actually down to no control of the driver, because we've got a headways thing and we've got timetables and what have you, and it's causing a big problem, especially sitting in traffic, because technically, unless you're at a bus stop, you can't let someone off a bus. So someone says, "Oh, can you open the door, please?" So, "No, I can't do it till I get to the next stop." But at this set of lights that's been there every day for the last 3 months, that it takes 20 minutes to get through them. So then the driver gets abused and so forth. Nothing ever happens to the individual. He pushes the button and he lets himself off and off he goes. But as I say, there is a big issue with that side of it at the moment in London.
thanks. That's much appreciated. Nadine.
So just to speak to that, so on the 70 route, there used to be 18 PVI, 18 buses, and now there's 17. So that route has gone from 8 minutes to 12 minutes. The 94 has gone from 5 minutes to 15. The 48, 5 to 15. So if there's one bus missing out of that for any reason, you're then looking at something like 24-minute wait for a bus. And as Kev said, that then means all of those passengers getting on that bus, and you haven't been allotted the amount of time to get those passengers on that bus. So then it caused a lot of stress to the passengers, but also to the bus driver, who's then being told by the supervisor, you're now running behind. And then we see, bus drivers on some occasions attempting to kind of catch up with that, and that, potentially causing an issue on the road.
Thanks. Much appreciated. I think we'll move on. We're going to delve into a lot of those subjects again, so I'm going to... So, Assembly Member Prince, did you have a supplementary?
Thank you. Very kind of you, Chair. Good morning, panel. As we know, TfL bus contracts run on a very basic principle that time is money. And the only way that a contractor can really make profit is by running those public buses in London to meet those timelines. The metrics over which a bus driver has little control on a shared transport path, so the bus driver is being expected to deliver all this timeliness, but he's not being involved in any discussion over to what the problems could be on the route. Do you think that TfL's sole measure of contract performance is safe? And have they explained why? Can I start with you, Paul, please?
Okay, thank you. The bus operators get paid effectively in two ways, as I'm sure you know, but just to reiterate, firstly, we get paid for running the mileage, so to speak. So when we tender for a route, we do so at a price. When and if we win that contract, as we run it, we get paid. And if we run all of the mileage, we get paid the agreed price. If we lose some of the mileage through our own fault, so we don't have enough staff or we have mechanical problems or something like that, then there are deductions made from the amount that we get paid. So that's a direct relationship between how successful we are at providing the mileage that we're being contracted to run and what we actually do. The other thing that we get paid for, and you may be referring to, is there is an incentive stroke penalty scheme which is called QUICS. It stands for Quality Incentive Contracts. Now, these are relatively small amounts of money compared to the main contract price, but they can represent quite big. They can represent a big proportion of the difference between a route being successful financially or not. And that measures something called average waiting time, which is intended to be a key measure for customers. So how long are they waiting, basically, compared to how long they should wait? And there's a very complicated formula for measuring that, and it's a very complicated mechanism all round, so I won't go into it. But what we've seen is a change from, on average, operators, I'm not just talking about Stagecoach here, but on average operators in London receiving incentive payments for good performance. That's has turned round, and it's frequently the case that penalties are now payable as a result of reduced performance, as a result of the sorts of things that we're talking about: reduced bus speeds, roadworks, capacity problems, etc., etc. And clearly, we as operators work very hard to improve that, and we're doing all sorts of things. I'll give you one example. We're actually, AI is the thing of the moment, isn't it? And we're actually, in our company, we're trialling an AI system that helps us with our service control decisions. We have a whole team of people working on that anyway, but we've now got technology to assist with that. So that's for us to do, and we work very hard at that. But of course, one of the reasons I'm here today is to talk about things that are not so easy for us to control. Now, just to pick up on 2 points that you were asking about, we do involve our colleagues, our drivers and others in looking at and thinking about the problems on a route, because you're quite right, there's a lot of technology available these days to tell us how a route is performing to the second, literally, and it's very easy compared to before to process that information, but there's still no substitute for hearing from the people who actually drive the things on it all, every day. And so we do get input from individuals. In Stagecoach, we have some people called route champions who liaise directly with management about their route, as well as, of course, the regular liaison with trade union representatives. So we do certainly try and take account of what drivers say and the sorts of issues that Kevin was talking about. And secondly, we work very hard to make sure, there are 20-mile-an-hour limits on pretty much the whole network, but chance would be a fine thing to get to 20 miles an hour on a lot of the routes a lot of the time. So we are also, alongside all that work on punctuality and speed and so on, we are measured very closely, as I think the committee are aware, on lots and lots of other things, including lots and lots of safety measures, and we take those extremely seriously. And the fact that there's no financial incentive associated with that in the way that there is with bus punctuality, it makes a difference. We treat it extremely seriously, and we work extremely hard on every aspect of it. I'd be very happy to come and talk about that at any point. I don't know if that answers your question, Assembly Member.
It's an answer, thank you. Michael, do you want to comment on that?
Don't have any particular insight into bus contracts between operators and TfL, but I was heartened to hear Paul's answer to the extent that it suggested that there are other things on which operators are assessed in managing their contracts. If it was purely on the things that you mentioned, I would be asking questions about, well, and to what extent does, for example, the safety record of an operator count in the oversight of the contract? To what extent are things like broader satisfaction from bus users on particular routes taken into account? I say that last point because amongst all of the public transport modes either run by or licensed by TfL, and I'm talking about the public transport modes, buses are the ones that generate the highest rate of complaints per 100,000 kilometres. So you would want to see some sort of connection between TfL seeking to manage that down and the regime that it operates with the operators. The other thing I would observe, and this is just a general point, is that contracts with incentives are, in principle, worth having, as long as they are related to things that the person on the other side of that contract can manage. And I think that kind of opens a question for me, because I think in the debate about what's going on with bus speeds, average bus speeds in the capital, there are likely to be a lot of factors which aren't necessarily directly in the control of the operators. So, there's a risk that the incentive is being pointed at only one part of the equation, which is all about delivering reliable bus journeys.
One of the union people want us to comment on that, please.
Yeah, sure. So I think if you're asking if TfL's sole measure is safe, we would say absolutely not, and we would say it's getting worse. So we surveyed over 2,000 of our members in the last month on fatigue and the impacts of fatigue, and I'm happy to read some of the results out to you. So how often do your schedules have not enough running time to finish your trip on time? 65% of people said frequently. Have you ever been forced to do overtime or finish late due to insufficient running times? 53% of people said multiple times a week. And in the last 12 months, had you ever a close call due to fatigue? 48% of bus drivers said they had, and that's up from 36% when they were surveyed by the Loughborough report on TfL in 2019. So things are more unsafe. And therefore the metrics in which TfL are using, I would say, are failing Londoners and drivers who are Londoners.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, the drivers don't have a lot of say in what happens. We're the people that have to work with what we're given. The problem with that being, which we have schedules that just are not achievable. You know, you've got some schedules that are still based on roads that were 30 mile an hour, which are now 20 mile an hour. You've had a number of places where there's been lots of new buildings, flats, houses and so forth. So loadings have totally changed. At this moment in time, as I say, there's no regard for the driver. You know, we talk about headway. Now, in theory, once one bus is 20 minutes late, all the buses are 20 minutes late. They don't ask to be 20 minutes late. It's something that's happened on the road. And it's not like they say to you, do you mind helping us? Can you do this trip? They just ignore you and let you run. You know, and it's a big problem out there, you know. You know, we always say what is reasonable. You know, and the problem is we've gone from a period of time when bus drivers might finish 10, 15 minutes late to now regularly finish anything from 30 minutes to an hour late, simply because of the conditions out there at this moment in time. You know, and we wonder why the figures, as we've just shown, have gone up as they have. You know, we all know what it's like when you're sitting in traffic all day long. You know, so I start my duty, I'm sitting in it. By the time I'm finishing my duty, 9, 10 hours later, nothing's changed. I've just been sitting in traffic all day.
So back to you, Paul, if I can.
Assembly Member Prince,
Yeah.
I know this, and thank you very much for your evidence, and this is really, but we can't talk about absolutely everything to do with buses. We only have 2 hours, and so we do need to keep focused on journey times. So although that is really interesting information, we can't just ask on every single subject on buses.
I was just going to ask about the incentives and the stress that these bus journey times put on drivers. No,
I think those are safety questions, Keith. I know these are really important, but those are related to the safety regime. We know.
Sorry,
they're related to the safety regime. We know what you're talking about. So if we can move on, obviously you have a question later on if there is time, but we do need to cover the subjects that we've got listed. Okay, thank you. Assembly. Sorry. Assembly Member Bakari.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to do a follow-up of what Michael just said about the impact on disabled and ethnic minority and groups, and I thought that was really good. Have you seen anything from TfL that they've done some sort of kind of equality impact assessment that you can refer to? Do you think that that's something that's missing, or have you seen something that has that you can clearly reference to?
I mean, in terms of the kind of general figures about who tends to use the bus more than other people, we did some research about 3 years ago that kind of opened that up and was behind my earlier comments, and we can make that report available to you. That I'm sure colleagues on the committee will be familiar with it. When it comes to, for example, proposals by TfL to change bus services, I mean, my understanding is that they do regularly carry out EIAs, equality impact assessments, and within that they assess the projected impact on the sorts of categories of user that we've just been talking about. So, for example, when there were a series of proposals to close down or change bus routes in central London from about 2 or 3 years ago, that was part of the proposal. So I think it is part of how they look at things. I mean, I think the fact still remains that those parts of the London travelling public are the ones that tend to use buses more. So anything that reduces the attraction of buses, for example, longer journey times, impacts them disproportionately compared with other members of the public.
I mean, Kevin, you were talking about the stress of that has on drivers. Does that mean that stress sometimes means that disabled passengers find it more difficult to get that time to get onto a bus because of that time pressure that you're on?
I think, depending what time of the day it is, for instance, because if you look at the school rush, the bus is fully loaded and it's got buggies in the disabled bay, and it's so hard to get people to move for a wheelchair user. But it's not just that, if you've got someone who's blind or anybody who's got some sort of disability, it's very hard to work your way from the front to find a seat or even get to a handrail. And when we talk about, it wasn't long ago that TfL were changing bus routes. Now, one in particular that I live on, I can't now get to a train station that I used to be able to because the bus doesn't go there anymore. So what it does, it goes miles round, and that means I've got 3 main roads now to cross if I want to go to the station. It's all these sort of things, And we wonder why we say, well, that station doesn't get used anymore, so we'll close it. And that sometimes is a worry, because it's, the station is a main one, but it's frustrating, to be quite honest, that now I have to go a different way to the way that I wanted to, which means I've got to now walk further to a bus stop, because I am disabled, so I've now got to walk further to a bus stop rather than the one that's just across the road from me. And I think a lot of people are finding this. It's really hard. I think I'll stop there because I'll go on forever.
I'm sure the Chair wants me to move on to the next question as well. So TfL have made an assessment. They've stated that the bus speeds have been impacted because of congestion, emergency incidents, demonstrations, and mechanical performances of the bus fleet. Is there anybody here who agrees with that assessment? And are there any other issues that TfL have not identified? Yeah. I
think when I look at it, there's some of the reasons, but a lot of this has been own goals. So when we look at, you're looking for space for pedestrians, so we've narrowed roads, cyclists, Once again, we've narrowed it. And quite often, if you're behind a push bike, you can't overtake it as a bus driver because there just isn't enough room. So you're stuck now at that speed all the way until that cyclist moves. It is. I think there's quite a lot that needs to be looked at when because you've got. Prime example is when they've made a lot of these places pedestrian. Now, let's imagine Oxford Street if that actually happens. Where's all that traffic go? Park Lane. Park Lane's never going to move. And these are the things that aren't being thought about, which are the knock-on events from doing all of this. I'm fully behind everyone being safe, but if that means by doing that actually the service that you're trying to run on other things are now impacted, that's a concern, isn't it? Because eventually you're going to say, like they did in the old days, there's too many buses in London, we need to cut them. And that's
Paul,
due to the speed.
Do you want to come in as well? I mean, do you agree with TfL's assessment, and do you think that there is, out of all of the areas that they've raised, is there one that is actually the biggest impact on bus journeys getting slower?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I can't remember all the 4 or 5 things that you read out, but certainly as you read them out, they all ring true as factors, certainly. I mean, the 2 that I did manage to write down, demonstrations, I mean, again, we've as operators have dealt with, the reality of demonstrations in London as the country's capital forever. But there has been an increase in recent years, in the last couple of years in particular. So yeah, that is has been an increasing factor. They mentioned mechanical performance. That's an interesting one. The overall mechanical performance of the London fleet has worsened a little compared to previous years. I'd say 2 things. One, I'd put that in perspective, that we were talking earlier about the need to run all of the mileage, and we get paid on how successful we are. Certainly my company, and it's true of pretty much all of them, that we lose less than 1% of the mileage through things that are, let's call them our fault, so lack of staff or mechanical breakdowns or anything else. It's usually a lot less than 1%. So that's a relatively small part of the problem. But yeah, we have seen, as we move from a diesel and hybrid fleet to an electric fleet, which is obviously a positive in so many ways, that as we get to grips with that different technology, that we have seen a bit of an increase in lost mileage there. But as I say, it's pretty marginal, and in turn that will impact on the road performance and gaps and speeds. But to answer the other bit of your question, is there anything missing from that list? Well, yeah, I think, just to follow on from what Kevin was saying and what I said earlier, I think the 2 big ones are the number and nature of roadworks, streetworks, which I was referring to earlier. There are more than ever before and having a bigger impact. And I could talk about that all morning, and I will if asked, but I'll leave it at that point.
We will come back to roadworks. You'll get a chance to say more, don't worry.
Lots of extra works, and the management of those works and the coordination of those works is, in my opinion, worse. And again, I can give examples of that. But the other thing I'd mention, following on from a point that Kevin said, I certainly agree with, that there are more challenges now with road space for buses. There are a lot of competing demands for road space. TfL have to make lots of decisions, which are very difficult, and I will say that. Obviously, I've got a particular view, but it is difficult for TfL to allocate road space for all of the competing priorities. But there is no doubt, having said that there is more of a challenge now for the bus network. It's less well protected. There is less capacity, whether it's cycle lanes or some of the LTNs or the 20 mile an hour or some of the urban realm projects. There's lots and lots of things which in and of themselves are good and worthy things to be doing. I'm not saying they're not. But are they having an impact on the bus network? Yes, they are. So that the capacity of the network is less than it was. So in very simple terms, when a problem happens, whether it's a breakdown or roadworks or whatever it is, an accident, it tends on average now to have a bigger impact over a wider area for longer, because the capacity isn't in the network to recover from that problem in the way that it was in the past.
Thanks very much. Assembly Member Moema.
Oh, sorry, could I just... Oh, apologies. Could I just on...
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry. I think you mentioned they talked about engineering as one of the reasons, and I think in the tendering process it mentioned something around staff and sustainability of staff and things like that, but to my knowledge I don't think it mentions specifics or specific metrics on engineering. So we don't see enough engineering members of staff in bus garages and bus depots, and I think if TfL think that there is an issue with the fleet, then they should add that into their tendering process, that there's an appropriate amount of engineering staff to deal with the issues, but to my knowledge that's not in the tendering process at all.
Thank you. That's very interesting. We will ask TfL, I'm sure, when we get them in January. Assembly Member Moema.
Morning, all of you. My question is for Michael, and I'm just looking at a map that's in our briefing, which outlines average bus speeds by borough for the previous financial year. And so Islington 7.7, Hackney 7.8, and Waltham Forest 9 miles an hour. And that's my constituency, North East. But across London, obviously, there is a bit of an issue. So your report the next stop, Making London's Buses Better, says that average speeds are lower in every London borough compared to 10 years ago. What, in your opinion, has happened over the last 10 years to cause this decline in bus speeds? We've obviously heard a little bit from other panellists, but from Travel Watch's perspective, what's gone wrong, if you like?
Thank you. I think it's all of the things that were mentioned previously, not just by Assembly Member Prakari, but also from the panel members. The one bit of gloss I would add to all of that is that I think the first thing that was listed was congestion. It kind of begs the question, what's causing the congestion? You know, that could be increased road traffic, but actually road traffic, by and large, hasn't been increasing. Or it could be something to do with the road space that's available for any given level of traffic, which I think takes you into the points that we made very well, which is about, you know, the incidence of roadworks having an impact on congestion. And that's important, certainly from the point of view of TfL's response to addressing bus speeds, because they place a lot of emphasis upon interventions, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, which are designed to reduce the impact of roadworks. But it also begs a question about the point that's been made previously about space that might previously have been available, road space that might have been available for buses not being there now. I mean, I have struggled to find some good data to paint a picture as to what has happened in terms of the number of bus lane kilometres, the number of cycle lanes, segregated cycle lanes over this period of time. But I have some sympathy with the views that are being expressed by my fellow panellists, so that there does seem to be something that's been going on with regard to the reallocation of road space, which I think is contributing to this factor. I saw there was a piece from a couple of years ago in the Times newspaper, which sought to try and understand what has been going on, and it had identified there are at least 20 roads in the capital, for example, Chiswick High Street, just to pick an example, so an example in West London, where the bus lane has been removed and in its place a cycle route has been put in place. Is that having a major impact London-wide? I just don't know. But logic would suggest it's got to be having an impact at least at a local level. And I was intrigued to read the comments reported very recently, last few days, from the former Transport Commissioner, was then Sir Peter, now Lord Hendy, admitting, yeah, I took a lot of road space out that formerly used to be for buses for cycle lanes. I almost certainly introduced some cycle lanes which were badly designed and have had an impact on bus speeds. Don't misunderstand me. That's not a reason for not implementing cycle lanes to promote cycling, which has many, many benefits. But it's about how these things are done and making sure they're done better. Just to go back to my point about traffic levels, are they part of the equation? If you look at the stats, average bus speeds have been in London, across London, have been declining, had declined noticeably in the early part of the last decade, and they sort of flatlined, with the brief exception of COVID. They flatlined, and they've been flatlined. So they were near, or even in the more distant past, over 10 miles an hour on average. They are now 9.2 miles an hour. And if anything, over the last 3 years, so post-COVID, they've been getting marginally worse. If you look at what's been happening with car traffic, for example, in London, inner central inner and outer, broadly speaking, it has been gently coming down, again, with one or two exceptions, and is now currently it is lower than the pre-pandemic level. So simply the volume of car traffic by itself doesn't seem to, on the face of it, explain what's going on with bus speeds, which is why I think you need to look at what else is going on in terms of the allocation of road space capacity and also the management of that road space capacity, whether it's roadworks or things like signals, which I'm sure we'll come on to later.
Can I ask one quick question? Okay. So I wanted to ask you something, Kevin. So you mentioned that I think one of you did, one of the first things that may be a factor is bus routes being pulled, or kind of fewer buses travelling on a route, so it becomes less frequent, so it gets cancelled, then another route replaces it. I just wonder whether that might be a factor in the slowing of speeds counterintuitively, because you don't need as much space on a road, so there is a business case therefore to be made on being able to use it for other things. People park on the roads rather than keep the main roads clear. I just wonder if that was a possibility.
I think when we look at this, and we have to go back, before COVID. So we had COVID, yeah. So TfL decided actually not so many people are going out now, so we don't need as many buses. They got cut back, and then we're going through this phase of people working from home, which is starting to come to an end. So what we're seeing is more and more people now having to go into work, which means there's more cars on the road, there's more passengers on the buses. All these things are causing problems, because I don't think anyone, if people didn't think that we was going to get back to where we were after COVID, they were very naive. And so when you think of the amount of buses we've lost, yeah, that's half the reason for a lot of the loadings that we're getting. Thank you.
Thanks. Assembly Member Russell.
Thank you. I just want to pick up, Michael, on what you were saying, because in terms of the pressure on road space, you were saying that car traffic has been gently declining, but you didn't mention the increase in van traffic for home delivery, which presumably is having some impact in terms of congestion on the roads. And I just wondered if that was just an omission or if that was a deliberate point.
Not deliberate. I was trying to cover quite a wide landscape, and actually I think that's quite my oversight, because you're correct. I think that's got to be a factor as well. But it's a reminder that there have been a lot of moving parts in the story behind what's been happening with bus journey times on average over the last decade and plus, and trying to understand how all of those parts relate to each other is a job somebody needs to do, because I don't think I've yet seen the compelling narrative that explains that then drives what is it that we do about managing that.
Yeah. And Kevin, I just wanted to pick you up on the thing about getting stuck behind people cycling, because most cyclists travel at about 15 miles an hour is a kind of average kind of cycling for someone like me on a normal push bike, not a sort of superhero in kind of lycra. And the average bus speeds at the moment are around about 9.2 miles an hour. So I'm just wondering if that feeling of being caught behind a cyclist in a bus lane is kind of, whether... Because sometimes the speed you travel between traffic signals and the next time you have to come to a stop is immaterial to the number of vehicles that get through the traffic lights each time you get there. So whether actually driving at 15 miles an hour along a bus lane, actually, although it feels slower than you might be able to go at if you could get up to 20, but I'm just wondering whether you think there's anything in that, or whether you feel like the bus lanes are being completely crowded out by bikes.
Bus lanes are being crowded out. If you think of a bus lane, it's not just for the bus, it's for the cyclists, it's for the motorbike. There's parking bays for people who got to do deliveries. So if you think about it, when a push bike stops, by the time it builds back up its speed, and if I'm travelling at 15 and not 20, and that's for a period of time, that 5 minutes has a knock-on on the time. And now I'm falling behind. Yeah.
So you're kind of, presumably the controls on parking in bus lanes and controls on bus lanes being kept for buses is really important.
It's, if it was... and we all remember what London was like before bus lanes came in. Every other bus went into London and the others were turned, and it was just a smog as we was coming into it. So over the years, there's been a lot of good work in getting the time and the speed up of buses travelling. But then what happens is now you open that up to everybody else, and that becomes a problem. Because, as I say, the whole idea was to keep it flowing. But if you've got lots of people parking as well.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I remember when the bus lanes first came in and the red routes when Ken Livingstone was mayor, and it was transformatory, and it made the bus into a really convenient way of getting around. And yeah, bring it back. Anyway, sorry, I'll get on to my main question, which is on the topic now of roadworks, but not specifically not borough lane rentals, which someone else is going to be picking up on after me. But TfL's operations report from Q1 of 2025-26 stated that excess wait times were ahead of target and journey times were remaining stable, and it listed roadworks coordination as one of the reasons for this. Do you agree with TfL's assessment that coordinating roadworks has reduced the time people wait for buses? And maybe Nadine, do you want to start, and then I'll move back along?
I'm not sure if I can directly answer that question. I think when I spoke to members before I came here today, you know, roadworks was a real issue for them for two main reasons. One, because they go on for a really extended period of time, and emergency scheduling is put in way ahead of a requirement. So the schedules change. And then they go on much longer. So what may be a 4-week piece of work becomes a sort of 6 or 8 week diversion. And the other thing that we found is that I don't think that that TfL are effectively billing utility companies for the roadworks and the impact. You know, we've seen a lot of money that they haven't billed them for, and therefore I would imagine, and this is just my opinion, that those companies therefore are more lax on getting work done and finishing that work, because then there's no financial implication for them, and so those roadworks are causing, you know, massive issue to our members. It was, you know, the first thing people said when I said we're coming here today was roadworks.
Thank you. That's really, really helpful. Kevin, did you want to?
Yeah, you know, from the bus driver side of it, you know, there's no real input from us. And I don't think there's enough being done to work out what the impact of them roadworks are going to be. Because you'll have roadworks here at the beginning, and then just round the corner you'll have another set of roadworks. You know, and then right in the middle of that it's a nice yellow box junction. Yeah, so drivers are being very careful, because they have to pay the fine, not the company. The driver will pay it. So it's very important that as you're approaching it, you know, you can't go because you need to make sure that they've all got round, and all that does now is just snarl it even further back, because there's no fault about all of this. You know, and I think it's a big problem in London is some of these box junctions are there to make money, not to do anything else.
Well, whether the box junction, you know, whatever the purpose of the box junctions, it's interesting that's
the designs. It's to do with the designs. The designs of some of these roads and the way that they're laid out.
So when you said that there's no input from bus drivers, are you suggesting that actually it would be really helpful if when, you know, I mean, obviously not like filling a pothole or something, because they're going to be asking bus drivers, you know, every 2 seconds what your opinion is, but on the big strategic bits of roadworks that are potentially going to go on for more than a week, do you think bus drivers should be actively consulted? Is that what you were saying?
I think when you look at some of the work that goes on, you know, on some of these projects, that, you know, if you look at the one that's going to be going on over it, like over in Barking, over at Dagenham and that, you know, that's a 2-year project. You know, and I have to ask, you know, and it's one of these things, what's the impact on them drivers who use the A13 to get to work, let alone the buses going down there? You know, do people... It might cost a bit more money to do it more so it doesn't have a knock-on effect so much.
Yep.
And I just sometimes don't think people plan this through very well on how they're going to execute it.
Okay, so we should be checking out exactly what processes are in place to check the potential knock-on impacts of the congestion that's caused by roadworks.
Yeah, because you need to think about it because, you know, you have to think about driver hours.
Mm.
You know, it's quite easy when you're doing a big project like you're talking about, drivers getting right to nearly on their driving hours, if not exceeding them.
Yep. Maybe we could hear from Paul now in terms of the impact on operators.
Yes, thank you. You began by quoting the TfL information on excess waiting time, their measure of the time a customer waits compared to how long they should do, and bus speeds. And to answer your question, yes, those numbers are accurate, but I think the context is important. Michael was talking earlier about the sort of longer term trends. We had a number of years, sort of 15, 20 years ago, where bus journey times were improving. Lots of bold measures taken, whether it's the congestion charge, red routes before that, and bus lanes, lots of things. Running times were improving and patronage was improving. Then in the run-up to the pandemic, both those things started to go into reverse. We had the pandemic where, obviously, completely exceptional, but since the pandemic, year on year, journey times have worsened until this year, where they are pretty similar to last year. So we've had 3 or 4 years of worsening, and now perhaps has started to level out. But that's levelling out at a level that is way worse than pre-pandemic. And the same is true of, well, excess waiting times has improved a little year on year, but again, it's well worse than it was before the pandemic. So I think that's the context. And as we were talking earlier, the impact of that, the implications for that is a slower network, one that you either therefore make the choice to have less frequent routes if you want to keep the number of buses and the cost of resource the same, or if you want to keep the frequencies up or even boost them, then you've got to increase the amount of money that's required to do that at a time when revenue is going down because of reduced passengers. So, you know, there's lots of moving parts there, but the overall picture is that it has worsened and is staying worse.
Got it. So the congestion, the heavy congestion, means that people's experience of the bus service with the same amount of buses is very much worse in terms of frequency, and that if the congestion was reduced, people would be getting a better service, and maybe that can either be done by literally reducing the number of vehicles on the road or by at least protecting the routes that the buses are using so that they're able to move more efficiently.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about it from the negative point of view of if things get slower, you either have to have less buses or less frequency, or you have to come up with extra money to keep the frequency up. Well, the same is true in reverse. Absolutely, if you can speed things up, then you then start to face choices about, well, we can either, in improving the running time, it's probably worth a quick explanation. If a route takes 60 minutes to go round, and you want a bus every 10 minutes, you need 6 buses. If it starts to take 70 minutes instead of 60, you have a choice. If you either keep your frequency at every 10 minutes, which then needs 7 buses, not 6, so your cost goes up by a sixth, a lot. Or you say, no, TfL can only afford the 6 buses, in which case it stays at 6 buses, but they become slower and the frequency
But you've got to wait
down.
longer to get a bus.
Worse service for the public. They're waiting longer, less people will use it, revenue goes down. So, but you're absolutely right. It's true in both directions. If we can speed things up, then it has the positive spin-off. If you start to have choices, positive choices instead of negative choices.
And also more people are going to be wanting to catch the bus because it's seen as a more reliable thing. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Just before, can I just welcome Year 6 students from the Dwight School, London in Brent. Hello. It's really nice to have you here. We're talking about how long people spend when they go on the bus. this morning, so hopefully that's of interest to you. And Michael, did you want to come in? Apologies for interrupting you for
Not
our
at all.
school.
The audience is more important. Just very briefly to pick up on Assemblymember Russell's points, I've got no particular insight, again, into the effectiveness of what TfL is doing around managing roadworks. I did notice that they have given evidence recently to the Transport Select Committee in which they have claimed that lane rental, and I take this to mean that the adoption of lane rental on the Transport for London road network has improved journey times by between 5 and 8% during peak periods. My observation is it may well be that as one of many interventions, it is helping them meet their targets. But in terms of what's actually happening on the network, Paul is right to observe that the reality of what bus passengers are experiencing is that waiting times are not getting any better. So the targets, it kind of begs the question as to where they've set the targets. They may have set them at a realistic level, but at the end of the day, passengers are still waiting, and in some cases waiting longer. The latest stats from TfL show that average waiting times for high-frequency services and the percentage of on-time, low-frequency services both have been getting worse over the last 3 years. There is now a 1 in 5 chance of waiting over 10 minutes for a high-frequency service. You'd be expecting the service to turn up at least every 10 minutes. Yeah. So the targets may be being met. It may be that some of the work on roadworks is helping that, but the experience is still not where it needs to be.
Yes, just to follow up on that, because of course, because I was thinking about what you were saying about excess wait times, because of course excess wait times, depending on how often TfL set the frequency. So if they reduce the frequency, they're more likely to meet the excess wait time targets. But as you say, people are waiting long for buses. Is that accurate? Again, layperson's reflection. Is that accurate or not?
Not quite.
Not quite.
Because
am I close, at least?
Because the excess waiting time isn't a purely absolute number. It's measured against how long people should wait. So in other words, if you change the frequency of a service, the amount of time somebody should be waiting changes. So the excess waiting time is still, whatever the frequency, the excess wait time is intended to be a measure of how good or bad the service is versus what the customer should expect. So if you give them a more frequent or a less frequent service, the expectation changes, the measurement, the target changes. So purely looking at excess waiting time won't tell you what you're saying. If you look at average wait times, then it would. But the targets are around excess wait times.
Much appreciated.
I hope that makes sense.
I'll restrict. I'll hand over to Assemblymember Wemmer, who is going to talk about lane rental as well. So
yes, beautiful introduction, Michael. Thank you. I will start with the others, but obviously you're welcome to come in as well. And perhaps we'll start with Kevin and Nadine and then come to Paul and then end with Michael. How optimistic are you that TfL's plans for a London-wide lane rental scheme will reduce bus journey time, sorry. I'll start with you, Kevin.
I'm not too sure, because it's an unknown, isn't it? So it's hard to say whether it'd work or it wouldn't work. You know, until it's happened, you wouldn't be able to measure it, because it is an unknown, if I'll be honest.
So if a utility was, I guess, think about the question, if utility is paying £2,500, how much it was a day, I guess there's a wider question about whether or not they would think it's the cost of doing business, or whether it would actually stop people from, it would incentivise people to reduce the amount of time that they spend digging up a bus lane.
I think, you know, we've tried, I think it's been tried before, you know, that you'd have to give notice when you was going to do roadworks or whatever to allow others, you know, to use your holes, so, you know, to run cables and what have you. I don't think that worked very well either. Now, the issue, there's a lot of big projects going on in London at this moment in time. You know, if you look at, I use their name, Thames Water, for instance, yeah, they've got so much pipe work they've got to replace that it's going to have a massive impact, isn't it? You know, and that doesn't just affect the driver, it affects the passengers, it affects the company's ability to make money as well. you know, and I think, and I said it earlier, you have to pre-plan and think of all the things that could go wrong and what you can do to minimise the impact, you know. And I don't, as I say, I will keep saying it, I don't think that happens enough. I think it's a case that a water company will say, yeah, I'm coming to do this. And we know what it's like. They do one bit, and then the pressure of that blows it half a mile up the road. So now they've got to go up there because it's leaking. So, and this is the biggest problem that we have. And, you know, you just don't ever get a chance to get moving because there's roadworks here, roadworks there. It's very frustrating.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nadine, did you want to come in? You're fine. Okay. Paul.
Yeah, I'm a little more positive about the difference that lane rental could make. I've sat and bemoaned the number of roadworks and streetworks this morning, and therefore I'm keen to find ideas and suggest things that will help with that, and either reduce them, of course, or to better coordinate and plan them. I mean, Kevin's absolutely right, and you know, in case anybody thinks that we think there shouldn't be any roadworks, of course there's got to be roadworks. You know, there are 101 reasons why these works are necessary. Infrastructure is ageing, particularly utilities, and I assume that's one of the reasons we're seeing more works. This work has got to take place. However, one of my points is that work could and should be better planned. It could and should be subject to better notice and consultation with stakeholders like bus operators. It could and should be better coordinated. It could and should be it should work better and closer to the plans that have been submitted regarding that work in terms of how long it's going to take place and how it's going to take place. We can think about priority for public transport through works. You know, Gallows Corner, the huge scheme there, has to be done, but it was planned a long way in advance. We were actually from our point of view, it's a good example of how planning a long way in advance and involving everybody can at least minimise the impact on, in our case, buses and our customers. I can give you some equally poor examples, but that's a good example. So planning, coordinating, and sticking to the plans and enforcing the plans are all important elements. And why is that relevant to lane rental? Because one of the ways of trying to create a situation where, whether it's utility companies or the boroughs themselves or any other entity, are thinking about how they do the work and how long for and all the rest of it, one way of doing that is through lane rental, because it's perhaps a way of making us all think about the way of optimising or minimising the amount of time and disruption that's taking place. So it's not perfect, it's not the whole answer, but do I think it could be part of helping? Yes, I do, and I hope and believe that boroughs will make more use of it. And my understanding is that TfL are talking to boroughs about that. They held a day recently, as you perhaps know, TfL and the boroughs, a sort of coordination day to try and look at all these issues, so that if there's a big scheme happening like with the Hackney Realm work, that's again a good thing and ultimately will result in some bus priority. But we got 6 weeks' notice of an 8-month scheme. We did not have time to plan any mitigations for our routes or our customers. The neighbouring borough of Tower Hamlets, which was planning a major scheme at Mile End, didn't know that Hackney was going to do that, and it affected the same routes. You know, there are examples where it can and should be better planned. It can and should be better coordinated. It's difficult for everybody. There are resource issues. There's been a loss of experience, I think, in a lot of places. But sorry, I've broadened out my answer a lot. But within all of that, helpful. I absolutely think lane rental is worth pursuing and can be part of the answer. So.
Okay. Before I come to you, the reason I kind of tried to put it in that way was because in the case of big utilities doing bits of work, I would describe myself as a bus user rather than like a cyclist or anything else. And things that should, and I've always taken the bus, like to school, whatever, always live 5 minutes from a bus stop, so this is just like London life. But one of the things, it's anecdotal, one of the things that doesn't seem to quite compute is that works happen in quite major routes, a red route in this particular case, but also the kind of feeder bus routes. But it's very incremental nobody really knows what's happening, including the bus drivers on that route, and there is no sense of when it's going to stop. And so journeys that would take 20 minutes, I appreciate if you're in outer London, this is a really small violin, but there are no alternative transport options. 20-minute journey is now increased to 40 or 50 minutes on the bus. At some point, everybody is just getting a taxi or an Uber. The Ubers are surge pricing because they know they can, because everyone's taking a taxi everywhere. I wonder, again, all of these inconveniences, people are paying elsewhere. Is the amount of money or the proposals to kind of rent the lanes, is it feasible? Is it going to make enough of an impact? And are we going to say to those utility companies, as people doing works, we need to cost the whole route of what you're doing, not just these little incremental 5-metre sections that will take, just looking while you're sat in traffic, will take years to complete? Or do we take out the whole route and then redirect buses so people at least know how long things will actually take?
Yeah, no, look, I have a lot of sympathy for what you say. I think you've described very well the experience for customers as a result of work. I think we're all, well, I guess we're all acknowledging that work does need to take place, but it can be better planned, it can be better coordinated, and in some cases, there's a separate debate that I've seen. I don't know the answer to this, but the way it feels to us as an operator is that there are more examples of works being deemed emergency now by utility companies than used to be the case, which means that they can come in, at the drop of a hat and dig up the road, and we'd all accept they have to do that in the case of an emergency, of course. But there is a suspicion, as they given the numbers of emergency works, that it can perhaps be used too often as a way around, taking more time and effort to notify everybody. Now, I don't have any particular evidence of that. It's just the way it feels to us, and it's certainly something we've heard a lot of people talk about in the boroughs as well. So we do need to find ways of better planning, better coordinating between the boroughs, within the boroughs. There's lots of relatively cheap and quick wins there. Around resource and experience of the people involved, and I think relearning some of the lessons that we've learned in the past, actually. But within that overall picture, if lane rental, properly designed, properly used, gives more pause to the companies and entities that are carrying out work, so that they do dig up the road in the least disruptive way for the least amount of time, then the impact on the operators, the drivers, and the customer is then reduced. Yeah.
Thank you. And then finally, Michael, if you wanted to add anything.
Thank you. I don't think I've got much to add to what's already been said, other than perhaps the blindingly obvious, which is it would be great just to see a little bit more data and information, and I think a lot of that rests with TfL. So your very good point, which is, will the financial incentive to the utility companies of entering to a lane rental scheme be enough for them to overcome and change their behaviour? Don't know, because I don't know what the details are of what's on offer. And then for however many schemes are managed better through a lane rental scheme, what is the likely impact to be? I've not seen any modelling. I don't know. TfL is the organisation that's going to be closest to this, and I think I heard that you're planning to bring them before the committee in the new year, so that would be a great line of inquiry.
Thank you. And then final word to Kevin, if you wanted to come back.
Yeah, maybe people won't like to hear this, but, I worry about these lane rentals because, depending on how much you're going to charge, who's the person who's going to pick that bill up? You know what I mean? So I think that also will need to be thought about, because the last thing I would have thought TfL would turn the public against them because their utility bills are going through the roof because we're charging them. So these things need to all be thought about. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Assemblymember McCartney.
Thank you. Well, I hope the lane rental scheme works because my local borough, Enfield, has just been given approval to be London's first utility lane rental scheme, and they have stated that any funds that are collected will be reinvested into improving the roads, for example, filling potholes and other things. But I want to ask about road space, and some of my questioning has been answered. But perhaps I could just start by saying that obviously there are bus priority schemes in place across the city, but data shows that compared to outer London, inner London boroughs that have a higher proportion of those bus priority measures, such as red routes and bus gates, show that those inner London boroughs have lower average bus speeds. Is that an indication that those bus priority measures have failed, or is there something else at play other than what we've talked about congestion and so forth? Paul, shall I start with you?
Thank you. Yes, it's interesting, isn't it, to draw that comparison. I mean, you're quite right. There are differences, as one of your colleagues highlighted earlier, between the different parts of London. There was discussion about how it varies between borough, but absolutely there is a theme that central London is, where the speed is around about 7 miles an hour on average, compared to inner London, where it's about, I think it's 8.1 at the moment, compared to outer London, which I think is 10.2 at the moment. I always wonder, I always think that those numbers probably don't sound that different, but actually they really, really are. The speed 3 or 4 years ago was 10 point something across London. It's now 9 point something. That might not sound a lot, you know. It's slow, isn't it? And it's a bit slow, but it's 10%. And as we were hearing earlier, 10% slower could mean 6% fewer passengers. So it is a concern that there are parts of London where it's slower still. I mean, I work for a bus company. I was in Limehouse the other day. I needed to get to the Strand. I thought, I'll get the 15. I thought, I'll just check on the app, and to do the 3 point something miles, it was 55 minutes. I thought, maybe I won't. That's an example of people being put off. To try and answer your question, I think the priorities that are in place, and there are some places where there are a lot of bus priorities in place. I can't pretend that there are. But firstly, there's the point about whether they should be shared or not. I actually think with the 20 mile an hour limit now, and the way a lot of cycles, increasingly large proportion are e-bikes, where they are doing the same speed or more than general traffic, they're probably holding up buses and bus lanes less than would have been the case in the past. And if you don't have them in the bus lanes, then there might be pressure for a separate cycle lane, which would actually take space away. So on balance, I'd probably feel that we're better off with cycles in bus lanes for safety and other reasons, rather than separate facilities. But I think I guess the answer is that as the traffic compresses, as it moves towards the centre, you get more pressure on road space, and the protective measures that are in place to protect the buses have become less effective, because if there's a bus lane, you've still got to get to it, and when you get there, you want it to be unimpeded progress, which is not always the case. There's an enforcement issue there. So the priority that's there is helpful in most cases, and we'd be in a worse position without it. But is it enough anymore to cope with the situation as it is now? No, it isn't. But a large part of the reason for that, as we've been discussing, are challenges around the number of obstacles and interruptions to the network, like roadworks, and also more permanent issues like capacity reduction. So, I'm sorry, that was a long, rambling answer to basically agree that I think there is a link between as traffic problems worsen, in particular boroughs and parts of London, the bus priority measures are no longer adequate to cope with that.
Okay, so what should TfL do about that? Put in more?
There's lots of potential answers to that. I mean, the glib answer is more priority, better enforced priority. We were talked briefly earlier about technology and the contribution that may start to make, and that can not just be in the scheduling of routes or the service control of routes, but it can be things like priority at traffic lights. There's been IT systems that give crude forms of priority at traffic lights for actually a very long time now, but they're getting better and better and can take account of situations, for example, where it's great having priority for a bus approaching a junction if that's the only part of the junction a bus uses. But if you've got four roads that meet and all four of them have got buses on, then they're all in conflict with each other. Technology is getting much better at addressing that sort of thing. So TfL, as I'm sure you know, do have targets around more bus lanes that they're trying to hit, about traffic light priority schemes, and they have invested alongside the operators in schedule optimisation. We've talked about lane rental. We've talked about the conference they've held with boroughs. But I think maybe the other element that needs to be looked at, and it's easy for me to say this as an operator, but perhaps we need to be looking at traffic restraint measures as well as all those things that prioritise buses. The congestion charge was a brave move 20 years ago. It was effective initially. It's been, speeds are lower than they were before the congestion charge came in. The government is dipping its toe into the water with, let's call it road pricing for electric vehicles. Maybe that's something we should be looking at. That if we're serious about cycling and walking and public transport, then some form of targeting of, let's say, of less necessary car and van and lorry traffic may be part of the answer. So it is roadworks, it is capacity, it is all the things we've been talking about. But there is another element to this about maybe the volume of traffic needs to be tackled too.
Thank you. Can I come first to the Unite reps about bus priority schemes? Do they work, and would drivers like to see more of them?
I touched on it a bit earlier. The problem that we're having is we have these priority lanes and so forth, but they're no good anymore in the sense that, as I said, you have roadworks somewhere, traffic queues up, and then that box junction's there once again. So where before I could just go straight across, I can't now because the traffic's all backing up on itself. So it might have been handy once upon a time, but now with roadworks and the way that traffic backs up on itself, that you just can't move. I was on a bus this morning, and he had to sit at the lights for ages and ages because he couldn't, and then all the cars were tooting him, but he just couldn't get round.
Yeah.
Because of traffic queuing up.
Thank you. Michael, can I come to you in the same question about bus priority? I noticed that Travel Watch, your report, The Next Stop, Making London Buses Better, recommended that by this summer, TfL should go further with further plans about how it planned to extend and accelerate the rollout of bus priority measures to reduce bus journey times. And can I ask, have you got any sense that TfL are doing that?
Yes, up to a point. And I'm sure you'll hear this when TfL are before the committee. When it comes to performance, in other words, in particular, focusing on trying to improve average journey times, TfL have a programme with 25 measures, of which 7, the so-called BP7, in their words, will significantly turn the dial and make a positive difference. These things include better management at roadworks, for example, not just, but for example, the lane rental scheme, improved traffic management and use of signals at junctions, greater collaboration with local councils. We'll come on to that in a moment, I think, from what I heard earlier, and improvements to bus schedules. So I've given you 4 headings, but there are 7 initiatives within those, and according to TfL, they will significantly turn the dial, which sounds great, but I don't yet know what the outcome will be. So if you look at the mayoral transport strategy, looking forward to 2030, the core forecast that TfL has is that bus average bus speeds will not improve from where they are today. If anything, they will be slightly worse by the time they get to 2030. The mayoral transport strategy target for 2030 is for average bus speeds not to be 9.2, but to be, I think it's 10.2 miles per hour. And this suite of 25 initiatives, of which 7 are the big ones, are supposed in some way to get them towards hitting that target. But despite asking, I've not yet seen anything that shows whether they will get them all the way to the target, halfway to the target, third way to the target, where? I don't know. So, yes, they have an idea, or TfL have an idea of what it is that they think needs to be done to improve journey times. But in terms of what is the outcome from all of this effort, what's the projected impact of it all, I've yet to see that. And when we said that by the summer, which is now past, we wanted to see a compelling programme, we didn't want to just see nice words on a page where it says we're going to do some lane rental stuff, which, as you've rightly said, has now been taken forward, not just by Enfield, but with, I think, 3 other councils shortly behind. It would be good to see some substance behind the words to give us the confidence, as was being asked previously, that these initiatives really are going to make a difference. And that is the conversation we're still having with TfL. In fact, we're picking it up with them absolutely precisely tomorrow with the London Bus Alliance, where we are going to ask them to say, you've said that these things are going to turn the dial. Show us your workings. Show us the projections that will give us the confidence that it's more than words on a page.
Can I also ask, your report talks about them having to work with boroughs on this, and that's going to be essential. And I can think of an example locally to me where TfL and the borough wanted to turn on green lanes a 24-hour bus lane. But it seems that whichever party hadn't given any thought to what would happen to deliveries to shops along the route. There was then uproar from businesses and residents, and the answer was, well, delivery drivers can park in the residential roads, which are already chock-a-block, had to introduce a one-way system to cope with the amount of rat running there is. And you can imagine that didn't go well, so there's pushback, and now it's gone very quiet on that. Do you think they do sufficient work with boroughs in looking beyond, if you like, a red route or a 24-hour route to look at other aspects of what that would mean?
I can only reflect on some of the experience that we've picked up in the last couple of years, not very currently, not very recently, but I think when we spoke to London councils and London boroughs, I mean, what we would hear is a plea always from the boroughs that TfL needed to engage more actively, more effectively with them in taking forward ideas for improving journey times. Now, what one hears over the last couple of years is that TfL have worked hard to do that, and you would assume that if that has been successful, that you would avoid the sort of situation where you get a fairly obvious reaction. And again, I think that's one to interrogate further, just how effective has that programme been. I mean, just on your point about the importance of working with local boroughs, I mean, there is an initiative that TfL recently launched, which is the Better Bus Partnership Programme, and perhaps we're going to come on to that later. Yeah. But there are some pretty I think, audacious, pretty big claims for the improvement in average journey times that those partnerships are due to deliver. There is a reference to improving journey times by 30%. Doesn't say by when. Doesn't say where. Is it on all routes in those particular boroughs or just selected routes? Again, lack of information, very frustrating when you're trying to have this discussion. But they're putting a lot on the potential, I think rightly, for partnership with authorities to work. But it does depend on working effectively together in the way that you suggested perhaps didn't quite work then.
Thank you. I think we'll be putting those questions when we get TfL in. Kevin, you were indicating...
Yeah, I think, one of the big things is traffic lights.
Can I just pause you, because the next question is on
going to be on signals. Yeah. Hold your fire. Not the next question, the one after. Yeah. So, Assembly Member Garrett, thanks.
Thanks. So everyone seems to agree that there's an increasing problem with congestion, and it's getting worse, not better. And yet, as you said earlier, Michael, the long-term trend, I've got the TfL report in front of me that I assume you're referring to, the Travel in London report from last December, we're due a new one. The long-term trend is like 25-year trend, particularly in central London and inner London, that traffic is down. It's down quite markedly, really, like a quarter, something like that. And yet, despite there being fewer vehicles being driven, or fewer total vehicle miles, technically, congestion is getting worse. And so I wonder whether what's going on then is that if you think about long-term trends like increasing numbers of 20-mile-an-hour limits, we've got traffic lights being adjusted to increase green time for pedestrians and therefore reduce green time for traffic. You've got low-traffic neighbourhoods which have an explicit policy objective of putting more traffic onto those main roads where the buses are. Do you think that, worthy those, some or all of those policies might be, do you think the trade-off, the impact that that's having on buses is being properly considered? I mean, Kevin, do you think when all those things are happening that people are properly considering the trade-off in terms of this is going to have an impact on buses trying to get down these roads?
I don't think anyone at this moment in time is actually thinking about the impact, if you like, that this actually is having. You know, I'll give you a little example. West Croydon bus station, yeah?
Very familiar with that.
Very good. Yeah, so as you'll well know, it can take a bus a good 15, 20 minutes to get round to the bus stop, simply because the trams have the priority up at the traffic lights. So everything just snarls up and it comes to a halt, you know. And it's not just West Croydon. There's other places that have these same scenarios where, you know, you get, say, 2-3 minutes to leave the stand to get to your stop, and then you get to your stop. Can't move off because there's another person running for the bus. You know, in the old days, it was once the door was shut, you could go. Now, if you see someone, you've got to stop and open the doors again and start the whole process again. But that is becoming, because where most bus stations are, it's normally quite heavy traffic around that area, which causes problems. No one's got that magic wand, have they? But I do think there needs to be a lot more work in partnership with speaking, not just to the operators, but also the unions that support, that, you know, that we represent. Because, you know, quite often we can already see what's going to happen, but nobody wants to listen because in their eyes we're at the bottom, we're not at the top, so our opinion doesn't matter. But when you do this job as often as, or for as long as most people have done it for on the buses, you can see what's going to happen because there's scenarios from times before, you know, on how it did it. And I don't think they sort of run these models. How did it work last time when that was a problem? You know, because that would give you an indication of how long a trip's going to take you, roughly. But no one's looking at that. And once again, as I say, the poor driver has to sit in it. You know, as I say, a passenger can get off the bus, jump on the tube, but the driver's just stuck in it. You know, and it does affect people's mental health and everything. Yep. All the stress, you know.
Well, I just want to reassure you, Kevin, there's at least one person in this room who's thinking about this and who is interested to hear what you have to say about it. I think probably not just me either. So I really appreciate what you're saying. Michael, do you have any thoughts on sort of unintended consequences of otherwise, you know, well-intentioned, let's say, traffic management plans, LTNs, 20-mile-an-hour limits, rephasing traffic lights, which aren't intended to slow down buses, but clearly something's causing the congestion and it's not more traffic because there's less traffic?
Yeah, and to be fair to TfL, they certainly have said that when it comes to traffic lights, there is an intention to, you know, rephase, give greater priority to buses in aggregate. Whether that's at the expense of some of the communities of road users that you've just mentioned, I don't know. But your key point, you know, is enough thought being given to the trade-offs and by implication the kind of negative consequences potentially on bus users. I don't know is the short answer. I was actually doing a little bit of reading back in history to the debate that happened about a decade ago in London when there was the road modernisation programme, which was heavily oriented towards giving greater priority to cyclists and a number of other measures. And I think at the time, some of the analysis identified that there were negative consequences for bus users, and yet the political decision was taken to progress. Time has moved on since
and now
then.
we're surprised that I'm wondering why buses are all very slow.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, look, I mean, it's slightly flippant. That was 10 years ago, different times, different world, etc., etc. But it would suggest that perhaps a kind of a visible trade-off, an explicit trade-off, hasn't always been made in the way that perhaps one would want.
Understood. I don't know if you had anything to add to that, Paul?
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. I think you started your question with an interesting comparison, which is that while the traffic levels, the amount of traffic is not that different over time, the bus speeds have gone down, and you've all been asking why that is, and we've talked about the amount of roadworks and the impact on capacity of the network for buses. But it's reminded me of one other thing that we haven't mentioned, which is actually even that's worth looking at, that even when there isn't any traffic to slow buses, there are occasions where it's still too slow. And I'll give you an anecdote, I suppose, from not too long ago. I was walking through Stratford quite early in the morning, and we operate a lot of buses there, so obviously you keep your eye on them. And I noticed that although I was walking down the road and there wasn't really any traffic at that time of the morning, I was keeping up with the buses because there were so many junctions and other impediments that actually, even though there was no traffic at that point, that they were making slow progress. So it's not all down to traffic and all of for much of the time, for most of the day and most of the network, it's about roadworks, it's about capacity and so on. But there are things that can be done and can be looked at, and I think this is where technology can help. At that time of the morning, why aren't the buses just proceeding through with green lights,
okay,
or whatever? Yeah.
I've got one final question on bus lanes, which is I've picked up some casework in my constituency, and I'm wondering whether perhaps Paul, whether this is a more London-wide pattern, or perhaps Michael. There seems to be less assertive clearing of badly parked vehicles or even illegally parked vehicles in bus lanes and on red routes than there used to be. There's a couple of hotspots in my constituency which never were a problem, and they've now become a problem, and there's persistent parking. And through casework, I managed to get TfL to kind of clear them. But it seems to me that that's not, what should be happening is they should be getting cleared just as a matter of course. Have you picked up that is a problem that's getting worse?
It isn't, though. You make the valid point, which is they should be cleared as quickly as possible. Absolutely. But I'll go back and check back at base. But from memory, I don't think it's something that I've spotted as a theme.
Okay. I don't know whether you've noticed that across what routes you're operating, Paul.
Yes, I hesitate a little bit to be definitive because I've got no facts and figures about it. But I think my answer would be on some priorities, red routes. Yes, others not so much. They still work well, but I think enforcement is becoming an issue in some places, which I guess is begging the question about why that is. But different priorities in different boroughs, I guess.
Okay, I don't know if you have very quickly anything on that, Kevin.
Yeah, I think what's happening, if you take where schools are in this and parents picking up their kids, you probably know Pamford Road quite well in Croydon. Yeah. Parents just park their cars where they want to park them, which affects residents as well. And because that particular area, as I was talking earlier, there's so many new properties been built. Where I am, when everyone moved in there, all our children were little. They've all now can't afford to leave home, but they've got cars. But you can't park them in our road, so you have to park them out in the road. So that becomes another obstacle for buses to have to navigate. And quite often cars are getting smashed up and along there, simply because, as I say, the road space is just getting reduced and reduced.
Thanks, Kevin.
Can I just speak to your...
yes.
So just on your unintended consequences of what we'd all argue are probably quite good ideas, I think I don't think enough considerations ever given to buses, and I don't think it's, people really understand the actual passenger loading numbers on buses. I think people often believe that tubes carry the most people, and they don't realise the bus situation. And if they do, they're not too worried, because they think, oh, buses, they're a bit of a a nightmare for London. But they carry a lot of people. It's some of the transport that some people can only afford buses. A lot of our passengers can only afford buses and aren't able to afford the tube. And we don't get. And I guess there's a bigger issue around, because buses are outsourced by TfL, the mechanism to have these conversations is more difficult for us as a union. But we're not consulted. I was sent drawings the other day for pedestrianisation at Holborn. Funny enough, because our office is at Holborn, not because we're the union of the buses. And it was referenced that there potentially be an issue with one route there, the number 1 route. And we've identified about 4 or 5 routes that we think would be impacted. And there's obviously been some money gone into it, because a consultation has begun, and beautiful drawings have been created about this. But the impact to our, the bus routes around there would be catastrophic. I mean, the Nwanism diversion at the moment is taking an additional 40 minutes. Our disabled members who are coming to meetings are 40 minutes diverted for one stop at the moment. So the impact that's going to have, and though we're never told about this stuff, and we're kind of sent it potentially, but there's no mechanism for us to have real input, and there should be.
That's useful. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much. And just to say, members, so we've got 3 questions left. We've got a hard stop at 12 o'clock because of the second panel, so just to think about the other members who have questions. Assembly Member Russell.
Thank you. And Nadine, that was really useful. Another example, because we had one earlier in the meeting, of where actually talking to bus drivers and bus driver unions when doing all this planning of any kinds of changes is just really important. So interesting that that's coming through as a common thread through the meeting. So we're moving on now to talk about signal timings, and I understand that that TfL is trying to really use tech effectively to prioritise buses when it comes to junctions, and it seems like they're doing lots of work to, when you've got buses coming from one road into a particular junction, where they're using that signal timing technology to detect where the buses are and kind of make sure that they get through the signals as efficiently as possible, that they're also then installing it on the other road that crosses through the junction, so that all the buses through that junction actually get that help and support. They're also kind of thinking about how to make sure that the detection technology is deployed as efficiently as possible. So if it's on a route where only 1 or 2 buses benefit, or it could be moved to another location where more buses benefit from it, then they're trying to put it into the place where most buses will, where they'll get more buses getting the benefit of that detection to get the signal timing benefiting them. And then one other point before I actually ask the question, which is we were just hearing about bus signal timing benefiting buses and people walking and crossing the road, and also people riding bikes. Just the people who are walking and crossing the road are the people who are trying to catch the bus. So just putting in that element, because we need to think about all elements of a bus journey, and the bus journey is the time it takes you to get to the stop. And if you're having to wait for a very long time and your lowest priority are the traffic signals, that as a bus passenger doesn't feel great. But my question is, how confident are you that TfL's commitment in its bus action plan to optimise traffic signals to deliver the greatest priority for buses, pedestrians and people on bikes, how confident are you that this work will improve bus journey times? Maybe I'll start with Nadine.
Yeah, I mean, my only thing on that is positive to hear that they're using technology to potentially deal with the issue of bus running times. You know, TfL has spent a hell of a lot of money using technology inside the cab, drivers' cameras on their faces, on their feet, on their eyes, to detect things around fatigue. They're not necessarily using that money all the time to make things better for drivers out on the road. So it's positive to hear that money is being spent to make signalling better and using technology to make that more effective for bus drivers, because what we have seen is an increasing amount of investment by TfL into things like the Seeing Eye machine, where it's being used to look at drivers and detect things like fatigue, but not deal with the issues that are causing that out on the road.
Yeah, and yes, I mean the kind of, but also not necessarily looking at things like rotas, and you know, if you're on earlies one week and the next week you're on late, your body clock doesn't have time to adjust. Absolutely. And then you've got more fatigue coming in as well. So perhaps TfL need to get better at communicating with bus drivers about what they're doing to try and speed up the passage of buses through London, so that there is a kind of some wider context that actually people who are driving buses understand what work they are doing to try and make that environment that people are driving in kind of easier to drive in.
Absolutely. There's so much pressure on the driver that there's only so long that you can look inwards and you start having to look outwards. So anything that's going to, you know, we've spoken quite a lot about, you know, there's lights for bikes to begin their journey ahead of the car. That's fantastic. You know, we'd like to see something like that, and money being spent on that rather than being spent on quite sort of draconian technology on the drivers, but without dealing with the contextual issues.
That's interesting. So you mean you've got the signal that lets the bikes just get ahead so they get out of the way of the traffic, and then the bus, and then the motor traffic and the rest of it, so the bus gets ahead. I don't know if is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, if you look at some of the big junctions that we have, you look around the areas like Brixton and so forth, you know, you can end up in Russia, you can end up with about 30 bikes in front of you trying to, you know, not the greatest of things, because it can take you quite a while, as I was saying earlier, to actually start moving off. And then they're riding 2 abreast, 3 abreast, you know, because they have priority, technically, because they're the most vulnerable.
Well, also, it's good they're not in 30 different cars, because that would be even worse.
So, you know, that will always slow it down. Do I think, you know, the problem is who will be deciding what the priority route is? That becomes the problem, because if you've got some of these junctions that we've got where you've got 4-way traffic lights, you know, I've seen it many a time where TfL have noticed a problem and they've held traffic lights and kept lights on for longer to allow it, and that's only because it's blocking the road further back. Yeah, so I'm not too sure if I think it's going to work. It could work, but I'm never a positive thing about these things, because I worry about the actual impact. You know, because someone's going to suffer, but to what?
Well, and the question is it important that the buses get that priority because they're carrying 40, 50 passengers compared to vehicles that maybe have got 1 to 2 or possibly 4 or 5 people in them, but most cars don't, and vans are not carrying 4 or 5 people, they're mainly carrying 1 or 2.
You know, you'd like to have priority, but then you'll have the taxi drivers saying, I want priority. And then you have van drivers saying, I want priority. You know, and then people say, hold on, I feel a bit like I'm being victimised here because I drive a car or a van or whatever. So it's never going to be an easy one. But being selfish, I want to get a move on. I want to, you know, because what I want to do is deliver a service for my passengers. And I'm unable to do that with all the hindrances that I'm facing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's unrealistic to expect the largest passenger carrying kind of system in London to have a range of different priority things to try and make it work.
Yeah. So TfL need to get on with doing everything possible to. And the points you were raising about fatigue as well, I mean, that is really important, because one of the other things TfL is trying to do is to reduce the number of people being killed and injured on the roads. And if people driving buses are fatigued, then it is, the likelihood of a collision is more likely. So kind of they can be trying by making the experience of driving a bus less stressful and less kind of congested, then potentially they're also helping to meet their Vision Zero target at the same time. Paul, did you want to go next?
Thank you. Yeah, on the signal timing, I think the question was, what TfL are planning to do? Will it make a difference?
Will it improve? Do you think it can improve bus journey times?
I think the short answer is yes. I think it will help. Will it be enough on its own? No, I don't think it will. So just to briefly share a bit of flesh on that. As I was saying before, the detection technologies have improved to the point where it's not loops in the road anymore. There's sort of cameras on lampposts and other things where, and the software that sits behind it is that much more sophisticated that rather than just simply giving buses extra green time, the systems are capable basically of much more than that, and they can cope with, and it can be programmed so that even if there are buses on each arm of the junction, it can work out, well, let's give priority to that one because it's got more people on it, or let's give priority to that one because it's behind schedule, whereas that one isn't.
Yeah.
That sophistication is starting to come, and that can only help. I think I'd make 2 points though. One is, I think it's really important, and colleagues on the panel and yourself were touching on this. There's then choices to make about prioritisation. Do you use that technology to completely prioritise buses? Well, I would say yes, wouldn't I? But then, as you rightly point out, what about the pedestrians? What about the cyclists? There are other things to take account of, I think it's very important. I was looking at a system that's actually outside London. It was part of my CPT role. But I was looking at a very new, very sophisticated system. And they were talking about how they were really going to speed up buses. But when you actually delved into it, in that case, they were going to be speeding up. They were going to be speeding up buses really by speeding up all traffic. And I wouldn't want to see that, because if you speed up all traffic, you get a temporary benefit, but you then in time just get generation of more traffic. You need to, in my view, you need to exercise a priority and choose what modes you're going to prioritise. So I think as long as TfL does that, which I think it will, then these systems will help. But my personal view, and I haven't again done any data, maybe TfL do, but I don't think that'll be enough to make up for the other things we've been talking about, the impediments and the capacity problems that are on the network now that are having such a big impact day by day, hour by hour. Are they going to overwhelm? Are they going to overtake those? No, I don't think they are. So I'm glad they're happening. I think it will help, but I suspect it's not going to be enough. And we do, just to repeat what I said before, I think we need to start thinking about some big choices about road space allocation and/or road pricing, pay as you drive, so that those who need to drive can, and those who don't need to pay the true cost of the costs they're imposing.
Yeah, thank you. Michael, did you want to chip in?
Briefly, I think Paul captured it very well, which is definitely will help. Is it enough by itself? Almost certainly not. Last year, TfL did a review of signal timings, and they claimed that they have saved daily over 10,000 hours to the benefit of bus users and pedestrians and those who cycle. I have no idea what 10,000 hours saved a day means. There's no context. Really helpful to kind of put some context in it, but it sounds good. It sounds impressive. At least it's positive, or sounds positive. But going back to one of my earlier comments, signal timing reviews, smart use of traffic lights. It's one of the Magnificent Seven, is what I keep calling it, the BP7 that TfL refer to as the big things that are going to make a difference. They also say in the same breath that the BP7 is just a third of the journey. I don't know if that means a third numerically of all of the 25 things in their work streams, or whether they've been a third of the heavy lifting. But those big things, those 7 big things, of which signals is one, will only take us a third of the way towards their ambition to take average bus speeds just back to where it was in the heyday of the bus. They then say, very, very kind of intriguingly, only a third of the journey with wider-reaching, long-term strategic work streams required for further improvements in journey time. What are those wider-reaching, long-term strategic work streams that they are tantalising holding in front of us that will turn the dial and get us back to over 10 miles an hour on average for a bus?
Mm-hmm. Seems like a good question for TfL.
Please,
and I'll hand back to
we're
the
going to
chair.
ask them tomorrow. If we don't get an answer, over to you guys.
Many interesting questions we have for TfL now. Assembly Member Prince.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Quick question to Kevin, based on what Assembly Member Russ was saying.
I am going to just remind you that we're really up against it, and I don't want to run into Assembly Member Garrett's last question.
For over 7 minutes to the other Assembly Member.
Yes, but we have 2 questions, and Assembly Member Garrett does deserve the time to ask his.
As I was trying to say, Kevin, you spoke about push bikes in front of the bus. There's a report by the government agency Active Travel, which is talking about narrowing the roads down from 12 foot to 10 foot. Do you think that would adversely affect the bus's ability to overtake a cyclist?
Yes, I don't think you can afford to narrow the roads any more than have been.
Yeah.
I think, you know, if you're doing that, what will happen is you quite often see people falling off their bikes trying to pull away from the lights sometimes. You know, now if that's even narrower,
yeah,
I do fear, you know, that there could be an incident, you know. I just don't think there's enough room.
No. Just a quick one to you, Paul, then, on that. Do you think it's a good idea that will it affect your performance that a bus carrying 87 people is stuck behind one push bike on a 10-foot wide road? Do you think that's good to increase bus speeds?
Yeah, look, I think I'd agree with the comment that Kevin just made, although I would add to it that with the blanket 20-mile-an-hour limit for buses, and although it's a bit of a generalisation, there are, as I said before, more e-bikes within the cycling population than there were before, which means the speeds of buses, I would guess, I don't know, must be higher on average than it used to be. That the number of instances between bus stops where a bus is able to overtake a cycle, either because, you know, we are stopping at most stops, there's not much distance, we can't get very fast with our bus, cyclists can go faster than they. So probably the number of occasions where opportunities to overtake cyclists is probably less than it was. So in that sense, it's probably less important than it used to be. However, I agree with the general point. Yeah.
So very quickly then, do you think TfL works effectively with operators when planning scheduling efficiencies, improving service regulation? But can I add to that? We know that there's been plenty of international studies that show that when there are contract incentives imposed, it also gives unreasonable stress and unreasonable risk to the bus drivers as well. Kevin, do you want to comment on that first?
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, because companies are less willing to turn a bus, especially now when you've got high frequencies. You know, that they're on for instance, they're on a 10 minutes in between. Yeah, it's all about the buck. It's all about the money, and there's no real concern about how that affects the driver. You know, it could be I've got a doctor's appointment later on that day, and I'd allowed myself an extra hour to get there, and it's just been eaten away, and it's the stress, and it's, you know. And when you say, oh, well, I need to be finished on time, now service requirements. And it just isn't fair. It really isn't. You know, I understand, you know, a business needs to make money. But at some point, you have to have a balance between your workers' welfare and making money. And I just don't think that seems to be a priority at the moment, because they're all competing against each other. You know, you look at schedules and so forth. You know, you're getting people winning work because 2 buses have been taken out. Well, who's doing all that work now? You know, it's. I do worry that they just, you know, that eventually it will be an industry that people probably won't want to do long term. Well, they don't anymore. You know, I look at people when it comes to long service awards and what have you, and how it's dwindling because the turnover is mad. Once they realise what a bus driver's job is, you know, a lot of people think, no, I want a life. I don't want to be doing this. And it's a big concern.
I look to you, Chair. It's up to you whether you'd like Paul to answer that as well.
What the question that it was addressed to?
If you'd like Paul to answer, so, or I.
Paul, would you like to answer that question?
I'll try and be quick, Chair. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I think the distinction that I draw, we've spent a lot of time, and I'm glad we have, talking at this committee about buses getting slower and the need to speed them back up again. But that's not necessarily the same thing as the operators having an incentive, or even a driver having an incentive to drive individual journeys quicker than they should be. We try and schedule the conditions that are there. I could bore the committee for several minutes, but I promise I won't, about how we try and agree those times with TfL. It's not always a straightforward or quick process because there are costs involved for TfL. But it's something that we're getting better at through technology, and I think there's a bit more meeting of minds. But on a day-to-day basis, the schedule that we've got is the schedule that we've got. We may be planning to change it behind the scenes. And what we're trying to do is manage the gaps between buses. That's how we will maximise the performance for the customer and, in turn, the incentive that TfL either pay us or don't. So actually, if one driver is trying to go faster than everybody else, that's actually a problem. We need them all to go the same speed, even if that's slower than the schedule, so that we maintain the gap. So it's not necessarily the case that drivers are being pushed to drive faster than they should be in order to keep up with timetables. It's about managing gaps, and as I say, that does not necessarily mean that people need to be trying to drive quicker than they should be. And we do, as you would expect us to, we do spend a lot of time talking about extra time for customers boarding and all that sort of thing to ensure that the safety is there. And given the speed limits, there's only so much drivers can do to catch up time anyway.
So can I just say one really short...
Sorry, just to say as well, we'll let you come in, just to say if there is anything that you haven't had a chance to say, and we will go to the last question in a second after we've heard from Nadine, then feel free to submit it as evidence. It will be considered, so, because I know we have limited time. Nadine, apologies.
I think when TfL start bringing scheduling back in as part of their tendering process, where they tender out for the work and have the schedules attached to them, the situation will get a lot better. Until that point, it won't get better because it's the only opportunity for the contractors to make money. The tendering process is rooted in how low can you make the price, and therefore they have to find ways to make money in that. And when we're talking about, buses, drivers not being made to speed up, but drivers are often made to slow down, stop for, 8 minutes at a time, to regulate the service. And the impact that has on the passenger, and the impact that has, I don't have the stats, but I would likely say that there's an increased level of assault, for example, on drivers in situations like that. And so when money is being made by regulating a service, that then can impact the driver, but also can impact the passengers' experience as well.
Yeah, thanks, much appreciated. Assembly Member Garrett.
So, Nadine and Kevin, you've spoken about the pressures on drivers, the increasing congestion, the time pressure on the timetable and so on. So one of the ways of alleviating that is by having a rest break and toilet facilities and so on at the end of the route, so that the driver, you're already smiling, you can possibly guess what my question is going to be. Would that be a thing that would be good, and is it happening?
No and yes. So yes, it would be good, and no, it's not happening. When we surveyed our members, over 50% of them said that their facilities were inadequate. Many routes a number of routes have no facilities. The facilities that they do have are things like Pret that aren't open all the time, or that, you know, are they difficult to access because, you know, the public are using them as well. So, you know, bus drivers on every route should have a TfL run toilet facility and welfare facility, because that impacts on fatigue. You know, if a bus driver is running around London trying to find a toilet, it's going to impact the service. If they don't have adequate rest facilities, then, you know, their ability to kind of sort of have downtime is impacted, and it's a massive issue for us. You know, we were promised by TfL that when they introduced a route that they would include adequate toilet facilities. That hasn't happened. That simply is not happening. I mean, I talked to you about North Greenwich. North Greenwich bus station has 3 portaloos that serves all the London Underground staff, all the TfL staff, anyone who's a bus operator, and any public who have left the O2 and need the bathroom. And that's not a modular toilet. That is a plastic toilet. It's really, really shameful. And I'll give you a very quick example of Manchester have started to reopen public toilets and promised that there'll be some sort of modular toilet on every single route. And we don't have that in London, and we're not doing that.
Sorry, Manchester have achieved it and London hasn't.
Andy Burnham's given a commitment, I believe, that they will be reopening public toilets on routes, and where they can't do that, that they will be putting in some sort of modular facility.
Okay. And does time pressure, you know, obviously that shortens the ability for the break and to use the loo and do anything else you want to do during that turnaround? Sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, I think one of the key things when we talk about facilities is about dignity. You know, some of the toilets that we're expecting to use, you can't use, you know, which means I've now got to go off and find another toilet. The problem with that is it could be a long way to find another toilet. You know, and my frustration is with a lot of these councils, you know, the bus driver brings in people to spend money, but you don't even want to put a toilet for us. You know, but it's not, it's the facilities. You know, the operators put on very little facilities as such, because most of them are TfL facilities. I'll give you an example. You've got West Croydon. Since August, hasn't had a hot drinking machine for drivers. The same in Canning Town. You know, it's just not acceptable, you know, and I've raised it right up at the top of TfL. It's not a priority for them, it doesn't feel like. You know, I would imagine any company has got a contract with these providers, and it's just ludicrous. You know, and nobody wants to help the driver out. You know, you're paying 25, 50p a drink, and now you're paying 3, 4 quid to get a hot drink to warm yourself up in the evening. You know, the facilities that are laid on have dwindled over the years. You know, if you look at the seating, you know, all hard seats, you know, depending on how big you are, whether you can get in behind a table. There's a lot of issues when we look at facilities, you know, because they're not a place you can really go and relax as such.
And West Croydon and Canning Town are both pretty big bus depots, big bus stations. They're not little, you know, a tiny stand.
Not Canning Town, I've got that Beckton. I'll get that right, Beckton. You know, but even Beckton, there's enough buses that use it. But as I say, the problem I got is, it's like the driver is the last thing that's ever thought about. Well, we know they are when you build a bus, because they told us. You know, the driver's cab's the last thing that's ever thought about. But, you know, I think it's about time that they start valuing the drivers, because if you value your staff, you know, and they're getting the right tools to do the job, I think as time goes on, you get a better performance out of your team.
Yeah, and all that on top of everything else we've heard about today. It's a difficult job. Thank you for doing it, and thank you, Chair, for the time.
Feels like a good place to end the panel. But just to say again, if there is anything you haven't had a chance to say, please do let us know in any format. We'll reach out afterwards. But just thank you so much for your contributions on a very, very wide-ranging subject. I've just got a couple of bits of business. Can I ask the committee to note the report and the discussion? Can we also delegate authority to me as chair in consultation with party group lead members to agree any output arising from the meeting? Yep. And the committee will now take a short break of 6 minutes before we resume to our next item. Apologies to Michael, who's on the next panel as well. He only gets 6 minutes. But that's what we've got.
Yeah. Talking about
Welcome back to today's Transport Committee meeting. We now move on to a discussion of London Travel Watch's business plan for 2026-27. Please can I welcome Tricia Hayes, Chair of London Travel Watch, and welcome back Michael Roberts, Chief Executive of London Travel Watch. So I'll have the first question, and then we've got a number of other questions from other Assembly members. So my question is, London Travel Watch's business plan sets out its key achievements, in the last year. Can you expand on these and outline what you think has been your most impactful achievement?
Thank you very much and good afternoon. I think I'll start, if that's all right, and then I'll pass over to Michael to add in the detail. But before I do, it might just be worth reflecting on the fact that this has been, we're coming to you today to seek approval for our plan for 26-27, which will be the last year of a 3-year planning cycle. So this is a good moment for us to reflect on what we've achieved over the last couple of years as we move into asking some more strategic questions about our organisational model and our priorities. But I think it's fair to say that although it's not over yet, 2025-26 has already been another very kind of successful year for London Travel Watch. And I think I would draw the committee's attention to 3 categories of things that we do in London Travel Watch. The first is our programme of proactive kind of campaigning and research work, where I would, I think, particularly like to celebrate our publication on Making Space, which has provided a much stronger evidence base on what Londoners want from their streets. We've also continued to use our end of 2024 bus report as a platform for really driving improvements into the London bus user experience, which you've been talking about all morning. So that's kind of our campaigning work. Second, we've continued to respond energetically to things that have happened during the reporting year where we needed to take action more quickly. Good examples of that are the work that we've been continuing to do on Euston Station, collaboratively with the railway industry, on our campaigning on the performance of the Bakerloo line, and our work to challenge TfL on how well and resiliently it responds when things do go wrong on the network. So that's category 2. And then third, I think we are always proud and never miss an opportunity to mention the work of our excellent caseworking team, because every year our caseworking team go the extra mile to take up the cause of Londoners who feel they haven't been treated well by transport operators. And the work that they do is absolutely fantastic. So, Chair, those are the 3 things I think I'd like to highlight in our achievements so far. Thank you. Anything to add, Michael?
I think you captured it really well. I mean, 2 things perhaps to mention. The first is that, as we've noted in the document, some things happen after a long time of asking. And some of that, on the face of it looks quite minor, like, TfL's decision not to go for colourful crossings anymore, where, this goes back, I think, 3 years. Some of it is big stuff and not necessarily just through our own work, but together with others. So, for example, the fact that TfL now has a 4-year financial settlement, which allows it to plan for and hopefully deliver better. And in that context of some things take a long time, they happen to have happened this year, but we've been talking about them for some time. Just leads me to my second point, which is that of all the things that Tricia has mentioned, that for me, a particular flavour of the year to date has been the degree to which, hopefully, but you'll have a view as a committee, the degree to which I think we have been more active in our role scrutinising what TfL does, whether it's as it were, in our own right to the conversation with TfL about the Bakerloo line trains, for example, or pushing them to go public on a commitment around being better in terms of how Londoners perceive TfL as an organisation that cares for them, or whether it's working alongside members of this committee and other committees in the Assembly, whether it's on fare evasion or the budget or bus safety, to take another. I think we've been doing a lot more with a lot more energy around our scrutiny role, and I think that is an investment because some of this stuff doesn't generate a result in the short term, but it generates a result hopefully over time.
Thanks, much appreciated. Assembly Member Prince.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Tricia, and good afternoon, Michael, because it's afternoon now, isn't it? So, thanks for all the great work that you do, by the way. When I first came on the Assembly 9 years ago, Travel Watch was struggling, but under your great leadership, I think it's improved massively, and I think, you know, it's worthy that said publicly. So, congratulations to you both. My question is, the business plan is shaped around similar themes to last year, but one of your stated aims is that there should be a medium-term hope/outcome around higher levels of public trust for TfL. But also, what other changes have you made this year?
Didn't quite get the last bit of the question.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, got it. Yeah. What other major changes have there been? Because it is similar, you've done similar themes. What other major changes have you made to the plan?
Oh, so I think this year is different. The year to come is due to be different from the year that's passed, in terms of some of the specific activities within the themes. So the reason for retaining the themes as we go into the third of our 3-year planning cycle, is because it does take time to get an outcome on many of these issues. And going from one theme 1 year and going to another doesn't feel like an effective use of our time. So we feel the themes still have resonance. And actually, if you word them in a different way, they're basically about the reliability of the public transport system, the connectivity to the public transport system, whether you're walking or using streets in some way, the broader quality of the service you get from the public transport system, whether it's in terms of accessibility or personal security, and it's around getting TfL to be much more customer first in its as an organisation, in its culture. The themes remain the same. I've just kind of reworded them, if you like, there. It's about the individual activities within them, and what's driven our proposals for the year to come is, I guess, a combination of things. Part of it is us building on research which we have recently completed, rather than just saying, well, we did that report and now we move on to something else. So the research we did on making space identified, at least for me, something that I don't think I realised quite as clearly as before, which is that if you ask Londoners, you've got 100 quid, how would you spend it across different aspects of the transport system? The third biggest priority, not very long after the tube and the bus, is making streets better. So what we want to do is kind of move on from the headline and say, okay, well, what does that mean in terms of priorities for improvement? So part of the programme is building on research rather than just leaving it to lie and gather dust. Part of it is driven by our own judgment about something that doesn't really sniff right and needs some attention. So the whole focus on whether TfL is investing enough in renewals, which is something that we want to take under the Better Transport Services theme, isn't something that is filling our post bag, but through our analysis, our understanding, our insight, we just go like, goodness me, if that isn't being addressed properly, there will be consequences in the short and medium term. Part of the activity is around building on an area where we have developed a bit of value add. So I'm thinking particularly of the work that we've done around personal security. So the report that we did back in 2022 was material, and TfL will say this, it was material in getting TfL to adopt the bystander awareness campaign. That was a big thing for us before my time. I can't take any credit, and you can't take any credit for it either.
I'm trying.
But we've got a bit of currency in the debate around personal security, and we still think there are some yards to go. So that's there. So the themes are the same. The specific activities within them are different. The reason for them, or the reasons for pursuing them, differ in certain cases in the way that I tried to explain.
And can I just add a really quick thought there? So I think it's a really good question, and we do constantly challenge ourselves on whether we've got the right balance between continuity and change. But I think for a 3-year strategy cycle, what people want from London's transport system doesn't change. People want a safe, clean, reliable, accessible, affordable transport system. So I think it's some degree of continuity, as Michael says, makes a lot of sense. But we do take a lot of care to make sure that we build in capacity to deal with things as they come up through the year. And we are in 2026 going to go into a new strategy cycle, which will give us a chance to ask those more fundamental questions. Thank you.
And a bit about building trust.
So the thing that has changed this year, which at one level doesn't feel much, but TfL are now explicit that they have a medium-term goal to improve the score that they get when they go out to Londoners. They ask Londoners a series of questions around customer care, but the kind of headline question is, do you think TfL cares for you? And in recent years, they have set themselves an annual target to get a percentage of Londoners that agree with that proposition. And the score has been in the sort of mid-50s, so roughly 55% of Londoners agree, yes, TfL cares for me. And we said, set your sights higher, set it for the medium term, so it's driving progressive, hopefully more customer-centric culture. And they have recently done that. They have publicly said they have a 2030 target to get to a point where that score is 66%, two-thirds of Londoners agreeing with the proposition. Why is that important? In a sense, the number is less important than what's driving, what's behind that. What is the strategy by which TfL, which at the end of the day is there are lots of positive things about TfL, but it is a big beast, which may say that it's not a monopoly because you can't assume people are going to use their services, but actually it is essentially quite monopolistic in London. You want to have some confidence that at the heart of this organisation that employs thousands of people and on whom Londoners depend absolutely fundamentally, that it is increasingly driven by a culture that is customer first, and that's why this is agenda is important. So we've made a step forward. Looking to next year, we want to deep dive, focus, whatever, on one particular aspect that they cover when they go out and survey Londoners. So when they do this customer care research, there are actually 20 attributes that they ask about. And value for money is in the bottom 5 attributes in terms of score. Londoners thinking that TfL delivers value for money services. We are living in the middle of an ongoing cost of living crisis. We think value for money is super important. Nationally, the Secretary of State for Transport has said value for money on the railway network, super important to improve through rail reform. We want to focus on that area because we think it's really important for TfL to be doing all it can to drive that. That's really difficult because it's a combination of the price that they charge for using the service and the quality of the service, and these things take time to improve. But you've got to set your sights high, and value for money feels like the right thing to focus on and is intended to build on a bit of research which we haven't finished yet. We've only just commissioned it around people's perceptions of value for money in London. We're just doing our own research in that space, and hopefully which will emerge before the start of the next business year, on which we can base the work that I've just talked about.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Assemblyman Russell, did you want to come in here? Yeah.
I did want to come in, yes, please. I've just got 2 points about a couple of the themes in the work plan this year. Under theme 1, which is more seamless journeys, you talk about TfL's public transport accessibility level, PTAL. Now, the PTALs are actually public transport access levels, which are how close it is to reach a bus stop or reach a tube station. Now, there was a report by Transport for All in this last year about what they call APTALs, which are PTALs that look at accessibility. And I'm just trying to understand whether you're actually looking at the APTALs, so kind of trying to see how access to public transport through that accessibility lens, or whether you're looking at PTALs, which is the kind of narrower definition of just how far away you can get to the station.
So familiar with that APTAL work, which is a great piece of work that Transport for All did, and absolutely shone a light on the limitations of the current methodology that TfL had, and the need to accommodate accessibility in the way that we might think of it in terms of ease for those who have impaired mobility. If I take a couple of steps back, when we first landed on these themes, we were very conscious that our ability to impact on the big theme is relatively limited, particularly within 1 year. So we could pick a topic like trying to improve the quality of pavements. But what we were very conscious of is in picking these activities, they should be consistent with trying to drive the ultimate outcome that the travelling public experiences. And when we set these themes, we said to ourselves, well, how might we take a kind of sense check that what we are doing is in some way consistent with improved outcomes in these themes. And we landed on PTAL for more seamless journeys for want of something better. Mm-hmm. But to be honest, and this brings into play the kind of review we want to do next year, it's a pretty imperfect way of trying to capture the essence of the experience when you use London streets, whether it's to walk or to wheel. The PTAL methodology doesn't really capture that. And I think as part of our review, we want to have a look again at the higher level outcomes that ultimately, whatever we say or do, are trying to promote slowly but surely every year. And when it comes to PTAL, maybe thinking about what we're doing against or trying to promote APTAL as something that should be taken up, which actually would come under a different theme around accessibility, mm-hmm. is maybe something we should be doing more of.
Okay, thank you. And then the second thing is in your theme 4 about building trust. There's one group of Londoners whose trust is very low in TfL at the moment, which is some work that Assembly Member Moema and I have been doing with residents in Islington, but also every Assembly member gets a big post bag on tube noise. And just wondering whether you've considered doing any kind of deep dive into the kind of the trust that Londoners who are plagued by tube noise, or the lack of trust that Londoners who are plagued by tube noise have in TfL, because I think TfL are really, what we're finding with the Islington case is that TfL are really struggling to talk about what is happening and what the cause of the noise is in a way with residents that gives them confidence that TfL are actually going to be able to make a difference and reduce the noise that people are experiencing, because it's a very complicated technical issue and it's very hard to kind of get to the bottom of exactly what's going on, why there's been a change in the noise, and that just feels like something that an area of TfL's activity where you could get some quite interesting data on trust or lack of trust from Londoners.
I'll be honest, it wasn't something that we had considered, but happy to take that away. Just being honest, I think where we are today, that might be difficult to do. It's TfL that does the research, TfL that does the surveying, and I don't think their survey sample gets anywhere near granular enough to say, okay, there's this group of tube users who are affected mm-hmm. by tube noise. And what's their level of trust? But we meet regularly with TfL to talk broadly about what they are doing on trust, and as well as our proposed focus, particularly on VFM, I'm very happy that we build this into our conversations with them.
That would be much appreciated, I think, from speaking for the residents of who are particularly plagued by it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Assemblymember Turrell.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon. What does London Travel Watch see as its biggest challenge this year?
Excellent question. I'll start with, you've asked for one. Can I have 3? Or maybe that's too many. I'll try 3 and we'll see how we get on. So first, I think we're still in the foothills of understanding what is the impact of the long-term financial settlement for TfL on the actual lived experience of Londoners. The TfL business planning cycle isn't complete yet. We've been, I think we've been clear in the past around the need to make sure that the level of renewals in the network doesn't lead to a deterioration in the user experience. And I think a big challenge for us over the next year will be getting a really clear, having a really clear impact on that issue, having a really clear grip on which bits of the user experience are getting better and which aren't getting better and what we could do about them. So that's one. Second is rail reform. Rail reform, obviously, we've got a rail legislation in Parliament. We responded to the rail reform consultation back in April. Rail reform has big implications for London and for London Travel Watch as an organisation. And we'll have to work those through and make sure that we come out of rail reform kind of well-tooled to represent the interests of the many people who use London's rail networks. And then the third, and I slightly apologise for saying this, is resources. You know, we achieve a lot of impact for a relatively small organisation, but the real level of funding that London Travel Watch has managed with has reduced by nearly half since about 2012. And I think when we do our review, our strategy and organisation review in 2026, we will ask ourselves some quite hard questions about whether our business model is still fit for purpose and whether we're getting the best impact we can with the level of resources we've got. So those are, sorry, that's a rather lengthy answer to a short question, but those are three.
Yeah, thank you for that. If I can pick up on the second one about rail reform. Yeah. So I'm a Thameslink passenger myself, daily, coming in from Shortlands down to Farringdon. Now, a couple of months ago, the Transport Secretary announced that's going to be nationalised as part of the rail reform from April. What isn't clear yet is, because this is a London line, or within about, it's on the list of the lines that TfL want to get. Do you think there's enough clarity about what these reforms actually mean for TfL taking on services, or do you share my concern that the idea that we're going to end up in this almost revolving door situation of 1 minute it's going off to Great British Railway and the next minute it's coming to TfL? Do you think there's enough clarity about what this is going to mean for passengers in London?
So another excellent question. I would say it's still relatively early days, but I think there are some principles that we can hang on to as we kind of go into the next stage. I think and one of those is to be driven by the evidence. And I think there's really good evidence that devolution of rail services in London, particularly the success story, which is the London Overground, is a case study for what happens if you integrate a transport network into a wider network. So I think that's first principle. The second is, I think that London's transport users should be empowered to influence the decisions that are made on their behalf, and we as London Travel Watch will be really keen to play our part in that. And then the third one, which is a bit more generic, really. I think the railway industry is going under absolutely enormous change program right now, massive organisational change in funding. In any big change situation, there is always a really big risk that the day-to-day challenge of running the service well is not the thing that management is thinking about all the time. So we will be working really hard to make sure that what happens in the near term is as good as it can be, and it doesn't get distracted by the long-term change programme.
Assemblymember Bakari.
Thank you. Do you want to say happy 25th anniversary to you? It's not just the London Assembly that's celebrating it, so it's you as well. So happy birthday. I want to talk to you a little bit about the other challenges that you are having to go through, and particularly in theme 3, the accessible, inclusive and secure transport. You were rightly, obviously, focusing on hate crime and faith-based hate crime. Considering the fact that TfL haven't had any explicit Islamophobia training and have not committed to doing any explicit Islamophobia training, are you working on this particular issue, and what have you been focusing on, particularly on faith-based hate crime?
Thank you. I'll pick this up first, and then if Michael wants to come in after. So I think the first thing to say is that Travelwatch is really supportive of the new task force that's been set up on hate crime and violence against women and girls. And we're a member of that task force, and we're using our research that Michael mentioned earlier to help kind of inform it. It is still very early days, but I think in our membership of that task force, we've identified already some key things that we'll want to see come out of that. And one of those is absolutely that the work of the task force is really well informed by first-person testimony about the experience that people have on using London's network. So because our research is clear that experience of hate crime and violence and intimidation against women and girls is deterring large numbers of people from travelling or travelling at the time they want to. So this is a really important issue for the success of London's transport systems. We are also looking for improvements in the reporting experience, which is not good enough and consistent enough for everybody right now. And we're also looking for a step up in the quality of the data that's available on hate crime and violence and intimidation against women and girls, because at the minute we're struggling to find a single authoritative source of the truth about what's really happening across London's transport network. So those are things that we'll be pushing for through our membership of the new task force.
Are you working with groups like Tell Mama, who I know have been reporting back to the police committee here about particularly hate crime? Because the fact that you're talking about the fact that there is an issue about the reporting of the crimes, and particularly Islamophobia seems to be increasing quite dramatically with a 19% increase. Have you worked with Tell Mama? Is that something that you're thinking about doing going forward?
So I was
similar.
Lucky enough to be here last week giving evidence to the Police and Crime Committee on a panel including representatives from organisations with expertise in safe design, but also bringing lived experience to the table as well. So I do, and I think Tell Mama is a member of the Mayor's Task Force as well. So we do have an opportunity to work with them through that, using that frame to make sure we all collaborate.
Yeah. What about logging of complaints? Are you looking into that as well, and doing more of an assessment of the complaints process and the procedures of complaints and the satisfactory a result of these complaints procedures? Are you looking into that too?
So that was a big issue in our 2022 research, where we asked people what were the barriers that either encouraged them or discouraged them from telling people what was going on, even if that wasn't going into the criminal justice system. And that gave us some good evidence that we're bringing into the task force around people just not having confidence that anything will happen if they complain, or not knowing how to do it. That's to do with the kind of reporting process, or feeling that it's going to take a very long time for anything to happen, even if they do complain. So we've got first-person evidence from our research 3 years ago that we can use to inform that work.
And one of the other areas that I wanted to talk to you about is funding restraints. Has that impacted the areas of work that the London Travel Watch have perhaps not proposed due to the concerns of funding restraints?
I mean, yes, inevitably, because in the wide and wonderful world of transport in London, every day there's something different that could be dealt with, and there just is never enough resource to tackle all of them. There are 11 of us. We, as you know, our budget is 1.2 million a year. The vast bulk of that goes on our people and our office. There's little else left for a lot of new research. So we have to prioritise at the end of the day. We have to prioritise, and there are some times when you reflect and you think, well, maybe there is something that we haven't done that we would have liked to have done, and it's a judgment call. Every time we come to you, now what is this? This is my third time, I think. I've come before the committee. Effectively, we are sharing with you our judgment call as to how we deploy a very small bit of resource on behalf of the travelling public. And as I said before, based on a kind of a mix of instinct, evidence, a sense of where is it that we can speak where maybe someone else isn't speaking. I mean, we aren't, for example, the only people talking about question mark whether enough is being spent on renewals, but it does feel like it's one of those spaces where there aren't enough people talking about it. Accessibility, super important. There are lots of voices in that, so we do want to contribute to that. But we've got to be modest in our aspiration, but also knowing that there are other players here. And if I had a reflection to build on your point about resource, one of the things that in an ideal world we could do better next time around, that we haven't done as well this time around, I think, is around partnership with other organisations, so that we get a little bit more bang for our small buck.
What are your views on the government's plans to have a UK-wide passenger watchdog that will probably have a lot more teeth than the London Travel Watch in terms of providing compensation and enforcement? I mean, is this something that you'll be pushing for too? Are you in discussions with the government and the Mayor about the need to change the remit of London Travel Watch as well, so that you get more powers?
There are a couple of dimensions to the powers bit. The Passenger Standards Authority, which I think is the kind of working title for the national watchdog, but the expectation is that it will be what today is known as Transport Focus, and it will morph into that. It will have a number of new functions that it doesn't have today, which essentially are being transferred over from the rail regulator. So, for example, setting consumer standards around things like accessible transport policies, which isn't envisaged for us. There are also then a series of new powers for the watchdog in other areas. For example, the ability to seek information from rail providers, which mirror what is being proposed for us as well. So we are getting, in those areas, we are getting increased powers that is absolutely mirroring what is proposed for what today is known as Transport Focus. But we are getting the consumer setting things. And we are reasonably relaxed about that for two reasons. One is that just from an efficiency point of view, if you're setting standards at a national level for rail regulators, you wouldn't, on something like accessible transport policies, you wouldn't necessarily want to have a completely separate set of standards just for London. So having a single body that's responsible for that is okay. The thing that we need to make sure is that our relationship with that body, which today is called Transport Focus, is one where we have the right level of input at the right time to the way that it carries out those roles, which is something we need to work on as the legislation goes through and they are starting to think about their future existence. There was something else I was going to say about that, but over to you.
Shall I tap dance while you're thinking?
Yeah.
I think I'm just going to reinforce what Michael's already said, because it's a super important point to us. So our principle is that our ability to hold the railway industry to account for the services that it's offering people within the geography for which we're responsible should be exactly the same as that which the new body will hold. And I think that's what that's the way the legislation is framed now. And I think, as Michael says, that's been really, really important to us. The question about how the national standards are designed, I completely agree. It's sensible to set standards once, but we want to be influencing and making sure that if London has issues that need to be considered, that those are considered as part of that national process. Was that long enough?
That's brilliant, because it's helped me remember what I was going to say. We also think there's quite an existential issue here, where I think we benefit from, as London Travel Watch, in not having such a hands-on role in setting consumer standards and having a semi-regulatory role, because in that role, that new national watchdog needs to take into account not just the concerns of the travelling public, rail users, but they need to take into consideration, for example, the operators, for example, taxpayers. Yeah. In our role, we're unvarnished. We are the one of the champions for the travelling public in London. We don't have to. We obviously do think about those wider issues, but they perhaps don't have to feature as largely or as equally as the others. So we think that gives us more latitude to say the things that we think are important.
Okay, thank you.
Assembly Member Russell.
Thank you very much. So, final question. Your business plan states that you are going to carry out a deeper effectiveness review before preparing a business plan for the year after the next business plan. So I'm just wanting to know how London Travel Watch plans to conduct that review and how you intend to report on the findings that you come out with and any actions that you might take.
Shall I pick up this one? So it's hard to believe it's 2 years since the committee's predecessor team kindly appointed me to this role, and you've given us an amazing board. With your help, we now have a fantastic team in place. But I think it's good practice for any chair and for any board to ask itself, to step back from the day-to-day business and ask itself every few years, are we clear about our organisational success factors? Is our business model fit for purpose? Are we being as impactful as we possibly can with the resources that we've been given? So we'll be coming back to those kind of big ticket questions in 2026, and certainly by the time we sit in front of you next year, we will be able to give you. We will have completed that process by then, and it will inform the business plan that we create then for the year after that. I mean, we can also, I think, be really helpful to engage you in that work if you're interested to have to make sure that we're able to think about what you want from us, how you would set our success factors. Planning is at a reasonably early stage, but I think we are going to bring in some external support to help us challenge ourselves on our effectiveness as a board and our effectiveness as an organisation, because it is always helpful to have a little bit of external perspective on what we're doing well and what we could be doing better. But we will, once we've got a fuller plan, we will certainly want your help.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I think we'll all look forward to learning more about that process. And incidentally, the Assembly is going through a similar process on the effectiveness of our own scrutiny, so through the Oversight Committee. So absolutely hear what you're saying. And it's, certainly good practice to do that. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Yes. And when you have that timeline sketched out, please do engage us and we'll be more than happy to help, I'm sure. So that's all of our questions. Fantastic. So thank you very much for Tricia and Michael for joining us today. Can I ask the committee to approve London Travel Watch's proposed business plan for 2026-27? Fantastic. And thanks for all the work you and the team have done over the last year and also over the last 25 years, as Assemblymember Bakari has pointed out.
And thank you for your support.
Always.
Please, thank you.
Can I ask the committee to note its work programme and meeting dates? And the next meeting of the committee is scheduled for the 21st of January 2026 at 10 a.m. in the Chamber in City Hall. There is... I've just lost it. So it's been a long year. There is no urgent business. Thank you. The meeting is now closed.